Hi, everyone. Welcome to our very first ever Thyroid Care Virtual Retreat. We're so excited that you're joining us today. We're going to get started around 11:03, 11:05 to give everyone a few minutes just to get logged in and settled. Thank you for being here. My name is Katie. I am part of the team at Paloma Health. I manage most of our community and partnerships, which means that I am I'm the face behind our social media channels, and I get to dream up and plan events like this. I manage our blog content, and I spend a lot of time engaging with our patients and community online. And I'm so excited that so much of our community is here with us today. This event was inspired by Women's Health Week, which starts tomorrow. And Women's Health Week is an awesome reminder, especially with the outbreak of coronavirus, to make our health a priority and to take care of ourselves. And we've seen a huge response to this event, which tells us that people want to connect and want to share knowledge and learn from one another. And we really believe in the power of knowledge sharing and helping each other take back control of our own health. So again, we're going to let everyone take a couple minutes to get settled in here. We have an awesome lineup of speakers today. We're going to kick off the event with Fern Olivia, who's going to lead us in a grounding meditation, followed by Dr. Leslie Meserve from Curie Md. She's going to talk about midlife health. Phoebe Lapine is going to talk about thyroid nutrition. Lauren Chambers is going to share about having a healthy mindset with food and hormone balance. Marina Tarasova and Dr. Annemieke Austin from Paloma Health are going to talk about thyroid care and how to have a strong patient-doctor relationship or partnership. Mccall Mcpherson from Thyroid Nation is going to talk about Medication 101, what you need to know about thyroid medication. Dr. Emily Kyberd created a program called Thyroid Strong, and she's going to lead us through a mini workout today, so you get to move your body a little bit. Mary Showman is joining us today, which is really exciting. She's going to talk about patient advocacy, and there will be an opportunity for Q&A with her. You'll see a chat feature at the bottom of your screen. The Q&A with Mary will be a great time to use that. And we hope that you engage with us throughout the retreat by asking questions and sharing comments. We're going to do our best to get to all of them. And then Taylor Morrison is going to round out the retreat with a self-care practice at the end. So that'll be really exciting. You're welcome to stay for as much or as little of the retreat as you would like. And we'd encourage you to really take these 3 hours for yourself, to invest in yourself. You'll learn a little bit more about Paloma as the event goes on. And for those of you who are new to Paloma Health, maybe you heard about this retreat through one of the speakers or through a friend. Paloma Health is the first online medical practice focused exclusively on hypothyroidism. We provide end-to-end care for hypothyroid patients, which includes at-home thyroid test kits, virtual consultations with thyroid doctors, nutritional coaching, vitamin supplements, and prescription management. And all of that can be done from the comfort and safety right now of your home. So again, you'll learn a little bit more about Paloma as the retreat goes on. And that's who we are, and that's who's hosting this event. So I think if we're ready to get started, our first guest today is Fern Olivia. She's had her own journey with Hashimoto's, and she's the founder of Thyroid Yoga. She offers so much to the world in the way of yoga teacher trainings, mentorships, intuitive energy sessions, weekly live Kundalini yoga classes, and even her own brand of organic and sustainable essential oils. So Fern, I'll let you share a little bit more about who you are and what you do before you lead us in a grounding experience.
Everyone, you can hear me? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for including me in this amazing retreat with Paloma. It's really an honor to be among the panelists and the doctors here offering this amazing information. I wish that this existed when I was struggling. I wish I could put up a before photo of what I looked like when I was struggling with Hashimoto's symptoms back nearly a decade ago. I lived in New York City and was working in finance. Now I live in beautiful Costa Rica full time, and I couldn't imagine my life would be like this when I was working in finance and fainted in the subway, when I had Hashimoto's, and I had severe adrenal burnout, and I was wearing high heels and all black suits and like constrictive clothes, and I had felt so restricted in my life, in my voice, in all areas of my life. I didn't feel creative, I didn't feel radiant, I didn't feel alive. And my life has done a complete 180 since then, because I became my own advocate for my thyroid and for my health and for my healing. And it's literally what I do. I live and breathe every day healing for myself. And then the clients, students, I give online Kundalini yoga, thyroid yoga classes 3 times a week. So connect with me after this if that's exciting for you. It's all on thyroid.yoga. Which I'm sure Paloma provided the link. So I'm really excited to be here because I know how you feel. I've been there years and years and years of my life until very recently when I moved to Costa Rica and really started to understand what it meant to live in freedom, right? Like, we can have our world take all of our external freedoms away, but if we can really give our inner body the ability to experience freedom, we can heal ourselves. And that takes a lot of physical, nutritional healing, of course, which you'll be learning all day, I'm sure. And then also how to heal on a spiritual and soul level, which is one of my favorite things to talk about and to offer, which is why today giving this grounding meditation is so, it lights my heart up with so much joy, because it really starts on a soul level and understanding where in lineages before we were repressed as women and as men, like where we were, where our freedoms were taken away. And when we begin to really learn and understand that, we can free ourselves from the mental challenges of repression and the challenges that we may have been restricted in this body and in lifetimes before. So that's the meditation I'll give you, walk you through today. And then I also invite you to, if you follow me on Instagram, it's at Fernolivia, just like my name, no space, just at Fernolivia. I just recorded a 50-minute free Reiki, guided Reiki meditation, where I'm working with sound healers in the 432 frequency, and that's for healing. It unites you with the healing frequency of the universe. So it's a free 50-minute meditation, and you can heal your own body through your healing hands with Reiki, because Reiki is simply channeling light energy in and becoming your own medicine woman or medicine man. You truly have the ability, because our doctors are amazing and they can tell us so much about what's going on in our body. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you possess the power to heal yourself. And that's really what I advocate for, is to understand what your body's wisdom is telling you. And that's in the meditation that I have on there. And then what I'll walk you through today, a little 10-minute version of that. So make sure you're seated somewhere comfortable and that you feel safe and grounded. So if you can, clear your space of any clutter, move your other devices away, and allow yourself to have this moment to experience your freedom. So place your palms either in your lap or on your knees. And notice where your breath travels. So as you begin to take deep inhalations and exhalations, notice if your breath can really travel all the way up your body into your throat, or is there an area within your body where all of a sudden you feel that restriction? It could be in the belly, it could be in the upper diaphragm, the heart, the sternum. I apologize about the airplanes flying overhead. They're just patrolling the beach here. So take this moment to connect with this beautiful breath of life, this prana, this chi, this energy circulating around your body. And you can place your palms if it feels more organic for you. You can place your palms onto your heart or even your throat. And give yourself the gift of coming home to yourself, right? It's what an important reminder that this body, this temple, is there for you, is asking you to pay attention, that the signs, the symptoms that you're feeling are simply your body's call. It's your body's plead. Your body's begging you to listen. And you can apologize. I'm sorry, thyroid. I'm sorry that it was your fault, or that you were broken. because I know I am so worthy to feel amazing. I'm so worthy of feeling free and liberated. And notice if you can really breathe deeply into those areas even more so. Your thyroid has been working so hard. And maybe if you've even had your thyroid removed, you still have a throat chakra. You still have this place of self-expression, of creativity. What would it feel like to be completely free, vulnerable, and self-expressed? What does that feel like in your body? Can you feel your cells dancing with health? And smile to yourself here, right? Like the rigidity, the stiffness, that's blockages waiting to be released out of the physical body. So when you feel that rigidity, that tension, that stress, can you allow your mouth to open in a sigh? Oh, that is healing the throat chakra and the thyroid, to sigh, to moan, to make sounds. So with your own healing hands, you can even brush the sides of your throat and even through your chest and your body to wipe off the residual collective stress of the energies that you may have been holding onto. That's not even yours. The stuck energy around your throat can be repression from your mother's lineage, or even your father's, or the grandmothers, the grandfathers that have walked before. We came into this life holding a certain karma, a certain soul contract, and many, many, many contracts with others. And ultimately, we are meant to be free, to free ourselves from the vows and decrees that we had taken in lifetimes before about silencing our truth, about illness, plague, and disease. So as you breathe here, perhaps you can offer yourself a new vow to listen to your body with compassion, to what he or she is telling you in every moment. And know that you have trillions of cells that are working so hard to come back into this calibration of the frequency of your most liberated, healthy, radiant self. And keep breathing here, either your palms on your throat or any area of your body that may have had some tension when you began to breathe deeply. And I'll give you some moments here to listen to the internal ocean of your breath. And can you smile to yourself with gratitude in this moment for offering your precious body this time to heal, to come back into balance? And feeling the breath of Gaia, of Pachamama, of Mother Earth. She is the ultimate healer. And that breath that you are breathing is a byproduct of the trees, of nature. So feeling, if you're inside and you've been inside for a while, visualize yourself in a forest. One of the most beautiful, lush forests you've ever embodied. So feeling yourself bare on the earth, whether that's bare feet or bare body, and connecting with the sensual essence of nature, the healing power of the breeze, of the plant. It's one of the reasons I moved to Costa Rica, is to be barefoot, to experience the harmony of nature. And for you, that may mean getting more plants in your house, putting more green around you. Green is also the color of the heart chakra. Very nourishing. And to invite yourself into this visualization of feeling yourself connected to your healing power that has always been within you. collectively, let's take 3 breaths in together, feeling the energy of nature surrounding us, feeling the container of health that we are so lucky to be receiving right now. Possibility of freedom, to remember that within ourselves. Inhale deeply. And exhale, side out. Free your throat chakra, free yourself from repression. Inhale deeply. Exhale, side out. One more inhale, full deep breath. Exhale, side out, let it go. Then begin to, when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. I wish meditation and this knowledge of energy healing and inner child healing and Kundalini yoga was available to me when I was in school for biomedical engineering. I studied pre-med, so I went on that route. And I chose not to become a doctor because I wasn't learning how to actually heal on this spiritual level that I knew. I had something inside my soul that knew that this needed to be revealed within me. So I've spent years and years over the past decade studying different modalities, traveling the world, learning from amazing teachers. And I pair that with functional medicine like what Paloma is doing. So I truly believe in the marriage of these modalities and really the importance of combining what you're doing with your nutrition, what you're doing with the testing, what you're doing with really balancing your body on a physical level with the spiritual level, the somatic level, and soul level, because they go hand in hand. And a calm, peaceful state in your body, what you're probably experiencing now, is essential to your healing. It's essential. You can't have one without the other. So it's a really pleasure and an honor to be here among these amazing physicians and holistic therapists today. And if what the work I do, if it resonates with you, please send me a message. I really see, I feel, I understand where you're at, and I would love to be of service with either trainings or classes, or feel free to join and experience any of the guided meditations I offer. And it's really a pleasure to witness your healing.
Thank you so much, Fern. I'm curious, if people want to learn more from you or find you online, where can they, I know you mentioned it before, but where can they find you online if they want more from you?
Absolutely. So you can find me online. The Instagram is at Fern Olivia. So just my full name, no spaces. That's an easy way to connect with me. Send me a DM. I respond to everything. And also www.thyroid.yoga. So there you can find the Kundalini yoga classes 3 times a week that I offer. Teacher trainings. I'm offering a pay what you can because I know that this is a really difficult time right now for so many. Pay what you can teacher trainings and mentorship. So I'm working on a sliding scale, and really if this work feels aligned with you, and either using this training for your own self-healing or for your community for becoming a thyroid yoga teacher, if that resonates with you, definitely get in touch. I've got some amazing teachers teaching thyroid yoga all over the world now. Niaz, which is one she's done some lives with Paloma, is amazing. And I love just being a channel for all the different seeds of this wisdom. And so thyroid.yoga, Facebook is Fern Olivia as well. Email is fern@fernolivia.com. So any of those ways to get in touch with me, whatever your heart desires, I'm here, and I will love to receive you in Costa Rica when the borders open again. You can come do a thyroid cleanse retreat here, and I would love to embrace you with a big hug when we can all hug again.
Fern, thank you so much for that grounding experience. Such a nice way to start off the retreat. I hope everyone's feeling good and ready for the rest of the day. Up next, we've got Dr. Leslie Meserve from Curie Md. She has a number of accolades, but I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself. above all, she is passionate about helping midlife women optimize their health. And she and I are going to do a bit of a Q&A style conversation today. So Leslie, I'll let you start by maybe telling us a little bit about yourself and what Curie Md does.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for having me today. And thank you, Fern, for a wonderfully calming, relaxing, healing way to start this retreat and to start this afternoon. So thank you for that. So I am a primary care physician. I'm an internist trained in primary care, and I'm the chief medical officer for Curie Md. It's curiemd.com. And I wanted to start with telling you a little bit about how this all came to be. So I'm 45 years old. And when I hit my 40s, I started developing some hot flashes and night sweats. And frankly, I wasn't happy about that and wanted to figure out what the heck was going on. And so I started my own journey through the medical system. Even as a physician, I mean, I knew what they were, but I didn't know exactly why they were happening to me at what I thought was such a young age, and what to do about it. So I started my own journey, talked to multiple physicians, finally found someone who could help guide me. And through that journey, came across this organization called the North American Menopause Society. And it's an organization of physicians, clinicians, researchers, educators who are all really passionate about helping women through this sometimes very difficult time of life. And I'm through this organization learned a ton, became a certified menopause practitioner. I have my own in-person wellness practice in Newport Beach, and I'm passionate about helping women through this time of life. And I knew that I could only reach a certain number of patients through my in-person practice, and so wanted to be able to reach a larger audience because I do feel there is a need. And so I launched Curie Md with my fantastic co-founders. And we are a digital, on-demand menopause clinic that offers menopause care from anywhere.
I love that. You guys have built a really important tool for women in midlife. And I'm wondering now, I'm curious, can you tell us a bit more about what menopause is, the science behind menopause?
And I know this is a thyroid retreat, so we'll get to how menopause and thyroid go together. So I don't want your thyroid listeners to think, gosh, I'm not in menopause. Why am I listening to this? But menopause is a time in life when a woman's menstrual cycle ceases. It's when the ovaries are no longer working. So it can happen for a couple of different ways. So one is natural menopause, and that's when the ovaries simply retire. So I like to think of them sailing off into the sunset. The other way women can go through menopause is a medical menopause, and that's when either the ovaries are removed surgically or when they're damaged through chemotherapy. So those are the two different ways. And menopause marks the end of the reproductive stage, and it's also when the estrogen and progestin levels are starting to decline. I want to kind of go a little bit into what the difference is between perimenopause and menopause. So perimenopause, because that gets a little confusing, but usually starts in a woman's 40s, sometimes 50s, and it's a few years prior to menopause up through 12 months after the last menstrual period. And during that time, women can experience irregular menstrual cycles, increased bleeding, they can have hot flashes, moodiness, night sweats, and then menopause is when you go that full year past your last menstrual period, or you have the medical menopause. So, and when menopause occurs, we know that sometimes women's symptoms that they were experiencing earlier in perimenopause will increase, and they can also experience depression, anxiety, joint aches, worsening of their insomnia, brain fog, all of the same symptoms. And it's mostly because the estrogen levels are at about 1% to 10% of where they were during the reproductive phase of life. So there's a huge fall off during menopause.
So it sounds, that's very interesting. And I'm glad you distinguished between perimenopause and menopause, because there's obviously an age difference there and some overlap. And I'm curious also, there's obviously some overlapping symptoms between perimenopause, menopause, and thyroid issues. Can you share a little bit about that overlap and how someone might distinguish between menopause and thyroid symptoms?
Yeah. And thank you for allowing me to do a guest blog on your site about this, because there is a lot of overlap. In your 40s and 50s and you're experiencing insomnia, fatigue, weight gain, you notice all of a sudden your cholesterol is a little higher, your LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, is a little higher, and you just feel like things are off. It is hard to know if it's from menopause or if it's from a thyroid disorder. So it's important to speak to your practitioner, and your practitioner will of course get a detailed history and listen to what's happening with your menstrual cycle and your other symptoms. And then labs of course help us to distinguish between the two. So it's helpful to kind of get that full picture and work with your practitioner to decide, because frankly, there is so much overlap. You can't do it just based on a Google search.
And I mean, I imagine it makes sense that someone might be in menopause and have a thyroid condition. You mentioned you share a little bit about how does menopause affect the thyroid? What's that?
Yeah. So the thyroid status, whether you're hyper or hypo, doesn't really affect when you go through menopause, as far as we know. But we know that both aging and menopause do affect what happens with the thyroid. So with aging, we know that there's a decreased uptake of iodine in the thyroid, for example. We know that menopause can affect the way that some of the autoimmune disorders with thyroid disease can be expressed. And we know that stress and inflammation, of course, can prevent the conversion of T4 to T3, which is an important conversion that happens. And we know menopause can cause quite a lot of stress if you're sleepless and having hot flashes all the time, and some elevations of inflammation levels. So I think that's how menopause affects what happens with the thyroid.
So if it is menopause, or both, but if it's menopause, what does treatment look like when you're entering?
So if it's menopause, and we know that your thyroid's fine, you've already corrected your thyroid, of course, the immediate symptoms, the vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes and night sweats, can be treated with cooling measures. So there's lighter blankets. Of course, there's a pillow called the Chillo that helps keep people nice and cool at night. I always recommend that women dress in layers so they can, take things off and have something cool on underneath if they start to get hot. Exercise is incredibly important, and I'm sure many of your other panelists today will talk about that, but it is so important for controlling weight and vasomotor symptoms and mood. So an hour of exercise every day, if at all possible, is so, so important. Sleep hygiene. So I know it's kind of a funny word, hygiene, but sleep hygiene is basically when we just devote a lot of attention to making sure that we get good sleep. So all of those things are important. We also have antidepressants that we can use that help with the symptoms of hot flashes and night sweats. And then one of the mainstays of treatment is hormone replacement therapy. We now call it hormone therapy. We took out the replacement word because we're not really replacing how much estrogen and progestin you had in your reproductive years. It's just a whisper of estrogen and progestin to sort of level things out. And when we give hormone therapy, we give estrogen plus or minus progestin, depending on whether a woman has had a hysterectomy or not. And really anyone can receive hormone therapy if she doesn't have a contraindication. And a couple of examples of contraindications, so reasons not to use hormone therapy, are clotting, so cardiovascular disease, a history of cancer. Those are the main ones. Liver disease, to name a few. We always encourage women, of course, they need to talk to their doctor first. Their doctor needs to have a full picture of what's happening with her before a decision is made. But I just want to make sure that women know that it is available and it's something to consider. We want to always talk to your doctor or your practitioner about the risks and benefits, but it is a nice option to consider once you get, of course, the thyroid controlled first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think an interesting question out of that is I think there's some concern that hormone therapy might make a thyroid condition worse. I'm wondering if you can speak to that, and if there is an interplay, what should someone ask their doctor or work with their doctor on?
Yeah, that is really important because you do have a lot of patients here who are working to fine tune their thyroid levels. And so if a woman has mild hypothyroidism and it's not well controlled, and we prescribe an oral estrogen, an oral estradiol, we can raise what's called the thyroid thyroid binding globulin. So you can think of it as like this binding globulin that attaches onto the thyroid hormone and it holds onto it, and then your body can't use it. And then that, of course, will make symptoms of hypothyroidism worse. It's not life-threatening. It's just nobody wants their hypothyroidism to be undertreated. And so if you're a woman with hypothyroidism and you're going to be treated with hormone therapy, topical estrogen is not going to cause that. So it's not going to cause that raise in TBG, thyroid binding globulin. But if you take it orally, just make sure that your thyroid is checked maybe a month or so after you start oral estrogen. And then, of course, check it once a year. And at any time you don't feel right, anytime the thyroid feels off, or if you feel like something just isn't right with your body, listen to your body and always ask that it be checked.
Awesome. And that seems to be a common theme for mentioning the same thing, like our bodies know best.
They do.
I'm wondering if I can throw you a little bit of a curveball here. We have a question in the chat.
Sure.
From Angela, and it says, if I'm 32 and do not have a cycle much, should I have estrogen tested? I barely get my period.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worthwhile. You can, that's a very early time to go through menopause, but it can happen at any time. And so if the periods are that infrequent, I would definitely get that checked. Easy to do, simple blood test.
Awesome. Thanks for your question, Angela. I see a couple other questions here. We are going to save all the questions. So hopefully we can get you answers later, and we're on a bit of a schedule today, so we won't be able to answer all of them, but please keep them coming. And then I have one last question to sort of wrap this up with you, Leslie. We've talked about a couple of things, sort of an overview about menopause, but if there was like the number one most important thing you might tell someone about menopause, what they can do for entering menopause, what would that be?
Don't settle. That is my message to all of you. Do not settle for anything. Feeling fine isn't good enough. I want you to demand and ask for the things that you need. Seek the answers and the treatments you need. Absolutely. I was discussing medication costs with a patient of mine recently, and this woman was delightful. And we were talking about the pros and cons of different treatments. And she finally said to me, and this is the first time a woman has ever said this to me, but she said, I'm worth it. And I was like, yes, you are worth it. And that's a message that I want all of your listeners and viewers to remember, is that you are worth the effort, you are worth the time, and you are worth the investment. So make sure that you do your homework. And I'm sorry that sometimes it takes, meeting with more than one practitioner and doing some of your own research, but that's what I want you to do. Menopause, and really any time, but menopause in particular, since that's my specialty, is not a time where you just accept feeling sluggish, sleepless, miserably hot, and mentally fogged and drained. It's a time to advocate for yourself and a time to thrive. So in a nutshell, don't settle. That's my message.
Thank you so much. I see a couple comments of people saying, I've got tears in my eyes, me too. So thank you for that message. I hope that we feel it inside, but sometimes we need to hear it again, that we're worth it. Same question for you that I asked Fern, if people want to find you, I know you mentioned it earlier, but where can they find you online? How can they get more information from you?
Yes, CurieMD.com, so CurieMD.com, or on Instagram, Curie.md. And that's how you can find us. And we'd be delighted to work with you and chat with you. And, we have lots of different options. We have hormonal therapies, non-hormonal therapies, but happy to chat with anyone and see if we can be of help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leslie. I really appreciate your time on a Saturday. And I hope you have a good Women's Health Week.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So up next, guys, we have Phoebe Lapine, who unfortunately can't be with us live today, but she did send us a video with lots of really good information. It's about 17 minutes, and I hope that you will stick around to watch it. She's talking about the diet's role in thyroid health and the gut-thyroid connection. Phoebe is a food blogger, she's a chef, she's a recipe developer, and she's also had her own experience and journey with Hashimoto's, which she'll tell us a little bit about. So give me just a second here and we will watch her video.
Hey everyone, I'm Phoebe Lapine, and I'm very excited to be participating in this summit with this all-star group of Hashimoto members. That's what I call those of us with Hashimoto's. So let me give you a little 411 on me real quick. I am a gluten-free chef, culinary instructor, and also an advocate for Hashimoto's and SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. I have a blog with lots of recipes and resources called feedmephoebe.com, and I also run the course 4 Weeks to Wellness. We start our new session May 18th if anyone's interested. And yeah, let me give you a quick overview of my Hashimoto's story. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the diet element for thyroid health, and also then end with a little bit on the thyroid gut connection. So I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's when I was 22. And at the time I had no idea what a thyroid was, what an autoimmune disease was, and decided to just go on living my life and ignore everything that my doctor told me, which was a super mature thing to do. Needless to say, I managed to totally wear myself down to the summit, or no, I guess down to the bottom of Health Mountain. And that's when I decided to really plug into everything that the internet had to offer on the subject. And also when I ended up incredibly confused and overwhelmed, and specifically around the food piece, since I was working as a private chef at the time. And that's when I decided to kind of take a step back and re-evaluate my relationship to my health. And I did this year-long experiment where I made one change 1 month at a time. And I wrote about it in my memoir, The Wellness Project, which came out a few years ago and kind of was my introduction to the Hashimoto's thyroid community. So now I have found what I like to call my middle ground between health and hedonism, which is something that I hope to inspire and educate and allow other people to find for themselves. So in terms of thyroid diet, I know a lot of people want a specific roadmap with all the do's and don'ts, but really it comes down to what your individual body can withstand, where you are with your gut health. And it all comes back for me to this concept of an anti-inflammatory diet. So inflammation is certainly a buzzword in today's wellness zeitgeist. And what it really means is your body's natural reaction to injury. And the issue isn't necessarily that it's happening at all. It's when the response goes on for too long. And that is what can be a prelude to an autoimmune disease and cause your body to attack your own tissues, your own cells. So taming inflammation is both kind of preventative for not developing Hashimoto's if you already have some thyroid issues of brewing, and then also once you do have some sort of autoimmune disease, for dialing back some of the ongoing damage and making sure that you're not making a bad problem worse. And it is totally possible to live an incredibly vibrant life with Hashimoto's and with other autoimmune diseases. It's all about finding that sweet spot of anti-inflammatory eating and living for yourself. And I will say, even though my module is about diet and nutrition and cooking, the living part is super important and not to be ignored. And I know other people are going to cover that today. So first of all, let's talk about the biggest inflammatory foods for Hashimoto's. Again, this is going to differ for each person. And I know if you've sifted through a lot of the leading diets out there, it can be very confusing. Some people will include the top 8 allergens to remove, which is everything from gluten, corn to eggs, seafood, nuts. Some people say alcohol, caffeine, and sugar on top of that. Some people, you shouldn't eat any grains, that you should only eat organic meat. Some say no meat at all, no lectins, no FODMAPs, no cruciferous vegetables. Basically, all you're going to be left with is blueberries. So let me break it down for you in even more basic terms. So I'll start with one of the most inflammatory ingredients for everyone. This is inclusive of people who have no thyroid issues, and that is sugar. So sugar added sugar, can be natural, can be refined, what have you, is in 80% of the grocery aisle, which means that we are constantly exposed to it. We're constantly training our taste buds into a higher vibration of sweetness than our bodies as humans were meant to withstand. And that causes a lot of downward problems for our liver. And our liver is something that we always want to take care of as Hashi-Pasi members or anyone with a thyroid issue, because it has so many chores that really help to regulate our hormones. It helps to clear antibodies if you have Hashimoto's or an autoimmune disease, and essentially it's just like kind of the underappreciated workhorse of our body. So what happens when we eat too much sugar is that there's all this excess energy that then needs to be converted into fat. And our liver is the one responsible for that conversion. And if it's too busy all the time dealing with converting sugar into storage and back into sugar for energy, then it doesn't have time for these other necessary chores, like the ones I mentioned of clearing our excess estrogen, which is so important for regulating our hormones, and then also clearing those antibodies. So basically, less sugar equals a more efficient liver, which will equal, a better functioning thyroid, thanks to some of those antibodies being cleared and thanks to our hormones staying even keel. So the second ingredient that we talk a lot about with Hashimoto's is gluten. And yes, it's demonized for a lot of other people as well. So let's talk about why. First of all, contrary to popular belief, there is no GMO flour that has been, injected with gluten, not the way it works. However, wheat has been hybridized in recent years to produce a higher degree of gluten to ward off various pests. And more importantly, in terms of how our baked goods are processed these days, a lot of commercial baked goods have an ingredient called vital wheat gluten that are added to them to increase the elasticity and reduce the rise time from what used to be 24 to 48 hours to like something ludicrous like 12 minutes. Thank you, industrialization. So the reason why gluten is a problem for Hashimoto's people is because of that inflammatory phenomenon called molecular mimicry. So once our immune system is already all riled up and off the rails, it can tend to have cases of mistaken identity. So in the case of gluten, it's a protein and it looks very similar to the thyroid protein. So if you already have Hashimoto's, it can exacerbate your symptoms by those antibodies accidentally attacking the gluten, and vice versa. It can be a prelude to a bigger issue with developing Hashimoto's if you already have a thyroid problem because of that ongoing battle with gluten. So anyway, it is probably the closest I would come to a blanket recommendation for you guys is to see what life looks like without gluten. Some people recommend being as strict as someone with celiac. I think you can be slightly more loosey-goosey, but it really depends on where your antibodies are and how badly damaged your gut is, because how badly damaged your gut is, it's where all of your immune cells reside. And if you have some leaky gut and a lot of these other conditions, it can mean that that immune response is even more hyperactive and even more dysfunctional. So another one we talk about a lot is dairy. I wouldn't say that it's as big of a deal as gluten for everyone, but it depends, again, on your tolerance. Lactose is something that a lot of people do not digest very well after a certain age. But really, when we talk about autoimmune disease, the issue is the casein and the whey, which can have, again, similar cross-reactivity issues as gluten because they are proteins. So it's something to experiment with an elimination diet to see your particular sensitivity. For a lot of these things, and like kind of the beauty of elimination diets is you'll only need to take things out for a short period of time in order to let your gut rest. Oftentimes that can kind of nip some food sensitivities in the bud. But once you reintroduce and see what your personal tolerance is, you may notice that you have some dire reactions to certain things. I know that when I first did it, God knows, 8 years ago, my reaction to gluten was enough to convince me, besides the knowledge of the gluten thyroid connection, that it really wasn't a good idea. Two others, GMO soy and corn, similar reactivity issues. And then there are other hidden food sensitivities that a lot of us on the autoimmune spectrum may experience. So again, it's why an elimination diet isn't important. I know a lot of people who get diagnosed with Hashimoto's fall into the rabbit hole of diets like autoimmune paleo, AIP, thinking they have to reduce all grains and nightshades and some of these other things. I will say I have a post on my site about this that I can offer the link to afterwards, that it is definitely not necessary for a lot of Hashimoto's people. In fact, especially women in their childbearing years may not feel great without a lot of carbs every day. So I would just suggest to do an elimination, to test it out, see how you react to nightshades, see how you react to grains, and kind of parse through your own tolerance. So now that we've gotten some of the bad out of the way, let's talk about the good, because I always say the best way to subtract is to add. So to fill your plate with as many anti-inflammatory ingredients as possible. And the top 5 for that are vegetables, maybe fruit, but you get it, plants. So the hue in a plant is a really good indicator of its antioxidants, and eating the rainbow, a variety of colors, is a good way of hedging your bets and getting all of those nutrients. And I get bothered sometimes in the autoimmune community by people who are just focusing on the demonization of all these bigger food groups and not focusing enough on all of the necessary nutrients we need to heal. Because what can happen, and I see this with SIBO a lot, is you can just whittle your diet down to 5 things, and then you really do not have the arsenal you need to get on this higher plateau of living. So this is like only a quick 15-minute talk. I can't get into a lot of the specifics, but that is the general rule of thumb. I like to myth bust the whole no cruciferous vegetables thing for Hashimoto's. You would really have to eat like cups upon cups of broccoli and Brussels sprouts that are raw in order for that to be a huge issue for you. And again, these are things that have so much going for them in the nutrition department. I just wouldn't worry about those vegetables. So 2 thyroid superfoods that I always like to advertise for people because they're really easy to incorporate. One is Brazil nuts. So Brazil nuts have the highest concentration of natural selenium as any plant. And I like to joke that if you eat 3 Brazil nuts every day, it just might keep the endocrinologist away. And that's because it helps with converting the thyroid hormone T4, the inactive, to the active T3. And it's also essential for protecting against the toxicity of iodine in your diet. And iodine is a funny one because you do need it in order to maintain that conversion, but too much of it can also be bad for your thyroid. So really good ingredient, just add to your daily routine. You can throw it in smoothies, but I like to just eat 3 in the morning. It is not the most delicious nut in the nut family. I don't think so. So there are other creative ways. I have some recipes on my site for making kind of this Brazil nut crumble or granola to add on top to other dishes. Second is maca, which is an adaptogen, and it helps kind of fine tune your TSH messages. And it also is high in B vitamins, which is something that a lot of Hashimoto's people tend to be deficient in. So those are just 2 really quick ones. I also have a post on my site with my 5 favorite thyroid superfoods that you can check out. And finally, I just want to end with a little bit of touching on the gut and SIBO connection to Hashimoto's. It's been my most recent focus. For those of you who don't know, small intestine bacterial overgrowth is when perfectly normal bacteria that are normally in your large intestines start to overgrow too high up, and it can really produce crazy symptoms of bloating and distension, a lot of IBS and GI problems. In fact, 60% of all IBS diagnoses are actually due to an underlying issue of SIBO. It affects 75% women, something that also is Hashimoto's related and thyroid related. And per that statistic, Hashimoto's is a big risk factor for SIBO. So it's something that I want you guys to all be aware of. And the reason why that is because the #1 cause of SIBO is food poisoning. And Hashimoto's does preclude you to be more prone to food poisoning, because when you don't have adequate thyroid hormone, it also means you don't have adequate stomach acid, which is the first leg of the labyrinth to kind of neutralize bacteria coming into the body through your nose and mouth. And that's basically what our whole digestive system is designed to do, is to kill that bacteria, because it is not meant to be taking up residence in the small intestine where we absorb our nutrients. And for a lot of people who have a thyroid issue, who also are malnourished, who, do not have their vitamin levels where they need to be, are losing weight, this can be part of the problem as well, as unwanted bacteria eating your food when you should be absorbing it yourself. Sorry, I digress. I could talk about SIBO for hours. So one thing to kind of keep in mind as a rule of thumb that I like to say is to kind of eat like a pregnant person. If you're someone who has a history of food poisoning, maybe you don't want to be eating that bodega sushi. Maybe you don't want to be eating super rare steaks. Just something to think about. And this is something that I talk about more, like the connection between the gut and the thyroid, on my podcast, which is called SIBO Made Simple. And since I'm running out of time, I'll direct you there. Episode 3, all about the thyroid gut connection and a little bit more about SIBO. It's also something we talk about in my course, 4 Weeks to Wellness. I have a whole meal plan that can help you suss out some of those gut issues. And yeah, I sadly am out of time, but this has been so fun getting to chat with you guys. Thank you to Paloma for all the work that you're doing in making education around thyroid stuff and thyroid care more accessible for everyone. If you need any delicious recipes that fall into the anti-inflammatory category, definitely go visit my site, feedmephoebe.com or thewellnessproject.com for my book and programs. Thank you so much, you guys.
All right. So that was Phoebe Lapine. She's really bummed that she couldn't be here, and we're really bummed that she couldn't be here with us also. But I think our team has put all of the links that she mentioned into the chat, so you can find more of Phoebe there. And next up, we have Lauren Chambers. She is the owner and health coach at So Fresh and So Green. She's going to spend about 30 minutes sharing about how to have a healthy mindset with food. She has her own journey healing gut and hormone issues. So I'll let her share a little bit more about that. But Lauren, thank you. We're so excited that you're here.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for that awesome introduction. Like mentioned, I am Lauren Chambers. I'm a nutrition and hormone health coach of So Fresh and So Green. And I am on a hot mission to help women balance their hormones and heal their relationship with food in order to feel their best and live their best lives. So I'm really excited to be here, and just want to give a shout out to Paloma for hosting this awesome event and empowering us to become advocates for our own health and bodies. I think that's so huge, especially for us as women. And also thank you to all of you for being here today, because I know it's your Saturday, and even though we're in quarantine, we have stuff going on. So I'm really grateful you guys are here, and I'm just really excited to share in this opportunity with you. So I think it's important to start and give you a bit of background on my own relationship with dieting and food and my hormone imbalances, and then we'll get into some practical tools and tips to help you that you can apply in your own journey. I would say my journey started back when I was young. I was always very petite, and I could eat whatever I wanted, and I never gained weight. And we were a huge foodie family, so we ate a lot and we ate well, and I just never really thought twice about it. And then when I was 16, I got my period, and I was a late bloomer, and my body just kind of morphed overnight. There were even rumors going on that I had a boob job and all these things, because I just all of a sudden got these curves I'd never had. And at first I was thrilled, but then I started to realize that I could gain weight, and that what I ate had an effect on how much weight I was gaining. And so I sort of took that as a challenge to control and spent the next decade of my life focusing on different trends and fads and diets to really control that and control my weight. And that led me on this whole journey. So I've tried pretty much everything under the sun, but the majority of those years were spent with calorie counting and restriction, because this was in the early 2000s. So I was eating a lot of processed food like lean cuisines and Luna bars and fat-free yogurt with cashew golden crunch and fat-free Jello with Cool Whip and all those foods. And I was eating no real food. I was never cooking, very little to no vegetables. And if I did go home to college to visit my parents and my mom was cooking real food, I would oftentimes not even allow myself to eat it because I feel guilty because there wasn't like a box where I could read how many calories it was, and I didn't trust myself with portion sizes. So clearly it was a very stressful and not enjoyable relationship with food. And it also took a major toll on my hormones as well. And so at the time, I had all these stomach issues. I went to see multiple practitioners and doctors, but I just don't think we're where we are now. And I wasn't working with the right type of practitioners. So I was getting no answers. But looking back, I fully understand now that I had hypothyroidism, among other issues. My hair was falling out and thinning. I stopped menstruating for 2 years. I was dealing with major digestive issues and constipation and bloat, and I had headaches, I wasn't sleeping well, and then I became really depressed and just my moods fluctuated. So it was a really difficult time, and even though I was able to maintain this ideal skinny weight, I obviously wasn't healthy, and my hormones really suffered as a result. So I went through this for quite a while, and then in my latter 20s, I just kind of hit this wall where I was like, I'm going to try something different and radical because I'm out of answers and I feel so horrible. And well, I don't recommend just going rogue and doing all this on your own, and you'll see why later on. I did start shifting my diet to one with real foods, and I started cooking for the first time in my life, and I started having way more vegetables and way less processed food, and just like really starting to enjoy getting in the kitchen and learning about different foods, and started experiencing joy with food for the first time since I'd been little, and realized that I could eat food that tasted good and also made me feel good. And that was like a huge catalyst for my life. And I started getting back on a regular cycle, and it was really easy to maintain a healthy weight without trying so hard and depriving myself of all these foods. And my hair grew back, and I was sleeping well, and my mood stabilized, and that inspired me to go back to school so I could become a nutrition and hormone health practitioner. And it also really inspired me to want to help people who not only struggle with aspects and issues of their health and hormones, but also struggle with the food piece of it as well, and your relationship to it, because I think that's really half the battle. Food's such an important part of our lives, and it's such a social part. You know, we're connected to it with other people and families, and it's just a really big part of our lives and a big part of our health. And if we're missing that aspect of enjoyment, and instead we're stressing out about food, that has a huge impact on our hormones too. So that's kind of the first piece, and what brought me on this path and here to you today. So I hope you see one, that I'm definitely not perfect, and I've been there, and I can relate on all these levels. I also had SIBO, funny enough too, so that's a whole nother thing, but definitely been there with the struggles, but I'm now really feel happy and healthy about my relationship with food, and I want to help get you there too, wherever you are in your path. So before I go into a few of my tips, I also just want to give some evidence-based and backed research on how dieting and restrictive diets and trends can actually backfire on your hormonal health in the long run. And one is that our hormones require nutrients to thrive. So the nutrients we derive from food are the building blocks of our hormones. Just like our thyroid requires selenium and iodine and magnesium and copper and zinc. We need all of these nutrients so that they can produce the right amount of hormones and communicate effectively with our endocrine system and carry out all their functions, which, as we know, the thyroid has a lot of different functions. And if it's not carrying out those properly, we get all those unwanted symptoms as a result. So the more we deprive ourselves of a variety of foods, which a lot of diets do, even if they are clean, even if they are adding in anti-inflammatory foods, most of them restrict things that in the long run could negatively impact our hormones. So that's just something to keep in mind. Secondly, if you're a woman in your reproductive years, and that's roughly a 40-year span of your life, our nutrients needs change during each phase of our menstrual cycle. So for example, if we are menstruating, we're losing blood and we're losing iron. And so we need more iron to help replenish. Or if we are in our luteal phase, the week before our period, we need a lot of B vitamins to help boost progesterone so we can have a healthy growth of our uterine lining if we're trying to get pregnant, or offset those PMS symptoms that happen when our progesterone is low. So depending on what phase of your cycle you're in, your nutrient needs shift. And if you are following a strict diet or plan, a lot of times we're eating the same things day after day, week after week, year after year. And that can develop gut issues as well. So I loved what Phoebe was talking about. I feel like that totally aligns with where I'm at as well. So making sure that we have a lot of diversity in different foods to meet those hormonal needs to help improve the health of our gut microbiome is key. And then lastly, but certainly not least, a lot of the health research on many trendy diets and workouts and exercise has a bias towards men and been done mostly on men, because researchers have even admitted that it's less expensive because men are less complex because they only operate on a 24-hour circadian rhythm, which we do too, but we also operate on a 28-day cycle. So we have this complex hormonal fluctuations happening all the time. So a lot of research that's been done, and now we're finally starting to see more, but that's been done on these, diets telling us how healthy they are and effective they are, don't take into account our fluctuating hormones and our different hormonal needs, which are different than men's. And we have a whole different biology, obviously. So I just want to point out those few things and to think of and consider when doing diets and how that can, work against us in the long term. So what do you do instead? How do you develop a healthy relationship with food that also supports your hormones and your thyroid? This may seem overly simplistic to a lot of people, but I just think it's so important to emphasize that really the starting point is with real nutrient-dense foods. So some of you may be way past this, some of you may still be working on this wherever you're at. I think it's a pillar to go back to over and over again, because even now there is so much processed health food out there. So foods deemed healthy, and I buy them too. There's, the paleo pizza crusts, and we just had that last night, and which I love, and the different condiments that are Whole30 approved. And there's a lot of different stuff out there that is free of the anti-inflammatory ingredients you would usually find in processed food, which is great. And I do buy those things, but I just want to emphasize that even as clean as it is, if it's processed, it has been processed in some form, which means it's already been broken down. So when we digest it, it's going to spike our blood sugar more. And that's going to cause an insulin response and a cortisol response. And then that eventually can affect our adrenals and our thyroid too. So, so going back to eating real nutrient dense foods, when we have foods in their whole form state, it takes a lot longer to break them down, and it has a lot less of an impact on our blood sugar, which is really key for our hormone health. Also, just focusing on a variety of nutrient-dense food, again, is key, because those are going to give our hormones, those nutrients are going to give our hormones what we need to thrive, and we can find those in real whole foods in their forms. So my recommendation here is, now that we are at home, a silver lining is we have the opportunity, hopefully, to try and cook more. So if you're not, this might be a good time to invest in, maybe if you're used to buying sauces, store-bought sauces, maybe try making a sauce at home. Or if you are buying any form of processed food, which is anything that has an ingredient label, basically, just making sure you're reading that label and looking for words that you don't recognize, or added sugars, or ingredient labels that have 10 ingredients or more, because chances are there are some inflammatory ingredients in there that are going to have consequences on your thyroid. So when in doubt, and just always, first and foremost, go back to real food, as simple as it may seem. Secondly, approaching food with an additive versus reductive mindset is key. So, like mentioned before, I love that Phoebe was saying this, and there's a nutritional psychiatrist I follow, Ellen Bora, who I love, but she says, we're so focused on clean eating, but you can eat clean and still be missing out on a lot of nutrients too. So again, when we're focused on like restricting a lot of foods and being like, okay, is this meal, you know, lacking these things to make it healthy or hormone healthy, we're not thinking about what we're adding in to help support our hormones. And when we do this and shift our mindset that way, it's not only more supportive for our hormones, but it's a lot more fun and enjoyable for us as well. So approaching each meal and sort of thinking about, okay, instead of like, what do I have to subtract? What can I add to support my thyroid in this meal? And honoring your cravings that way too. So, you know, if certain foods have been demonized, like maybe carbs, and we're feeling guilty, but our body's really craving some carbs or a piece of toast, maybe adding some selenium and iodine rich eggs that are going to support your thyroid. Or if you want pasta, you know, maybe getting a chickpea form if grains are an issue for you, and then adding some shellfish, which are rich in iodine. So when you take that approach, I just think it's a lot more sustainable in the long term. A lot more fun, enjoyable, and again, your hormones are going to thank you for it, because you're focused on giving them those nutrients they need to carry out their functions. And then last but certainly not least is tuning into your body and cyclical needs. So like I mentioned before, if you're a woman in your reproductive years, our hormones are fluctuating on a 28-day cycle, and we have different nutrient needs during different phases. So tuning into this can be a really great way to tune into your body too. So for a personal example, this week I have been in my luteal phase, and which is the week leading up to menstruation, and I still had a lot of energy the first couple days, waning from my ovulatory phase, which is when estrogen and testosterone are high, and so that helps with energy levels. And then midweek, I hit this slump, and I was feeling unmotivated and unproductive and tired. And I had planned on going for a run, and I was going to drink a smoothie. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I feel tired. I just want to stretch or do yoga. And I want like some toast, and I want carbs. And, you know, obviously, like earlier in this journey, if I had those needs or cravings, I would not have honored them. I would have ignored them and said, nope, that's not what I'm doing, because this is the plan, this is what's healthy, this is what I've been told is healthy, and that's what I'm doing. I would have pushed through and forced it. So now I was able to tap in and say, okay, I'm on this day of my cycle. It's clear I feel this way because I'm in need of more B vitamins, which are rich in carbs. And, you know, I'm going to honor my body, honor what it needs. And it was just a lot easier to do that. It was very self-validating that, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not a failure for craving carbs or not wanting to go on a run. This is just where I'm at in my cycle, and I need to honor it. So real quick, it looks like I have to wrap up. So I'm so sorry I have this problem of going over, but I just want to say it can be difficult to know where to start with this if you've never done it or you have an irregular cycle due to hormonal health fluctuations. So that is why I created a hormone balance reset plan. It's on my website at So Fresh and So Green, and it helps walk you through each phase of your cycle with recipes and tips and foods and exercise and supplements just to help support each phase. And the more you can tune into that, the more easier you'll be able to tune into your body and your cravings and honor them and those needs. And I think that's the most empowering thing. So sorry for going over. Thank you guys so much.
That was great. You ended like right on time.
I was trying. I could have said more. I could have gone on forever. But yeah, so you can find me on my website, So Fresh and So Green, and I'm sure there'll be information after the event. So thank you guys all so much.
Yeah, we've included your link, like your website link in the chat so people can find you there. And then I know on social, Green has some extra E's in it.
Yeah, the original was taken, so it's got 5 E's. So okay. It's an N like Nancy. So Fresh N, So Green, 5 E's.
Awesome. Lauren, thank you so much. I've seen in the chat and just listening myself, your story is really relatable to people. And so I think some of the tips you've shared will be really helpful. I also see in the chat that people are asking some follow-up questions. So okay. I might send those to you afterwards so that we can get answers. And for all of you in the chat, all of you listening, we will save all of your questions and figure out how to get them to you.
Perfect. I will answer them. So
awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren.
Thank you. Bye.
Awesome. So next up, we've got Marina Tarasova and Dr. Annemieke Austin from Paloma Health. And I see that it's still on. Oh, it's on my face. Great. They are going to talk about thyroid care and the patient-doctor relationship and partnerships. Marina is the co-founder of Paloma Health, and she's in her career, she's helped launch some of the most successful medication brands in the nation. And she has a real interest in using technology to improve patient care. So she'll share a little bit about that. And Dr. Austin is one of the Paloma Health doctors. She has her own history with autoimmune disorders and also has a really interesting approach to patient care that's very integrative and comprehensive. So I'll let them take it away. They're going to do a little bit of a Q&A.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you so much to everyone who's tuning in. A special thank you to all the panelists who made time for us today, and to all everyone out there in the audience. I'm just so thrilled that we were able to gather this group of knowledgeable and passionate practitioners, and hopefully you're all able to take away some really valuable insights from each speaker. I know I have been, and I'm just so grateful for everyone joining today and making the time. Are doing something like this, and it's been really sort of a pleasure to see so much interest from folks. I saw when people were saying where they were from that we were getting folks from quite all over the United States, and even some folks from outside the US, which is really exciting too. So this is our first time, and we're welcome your feedback after the event on anything we could do differently next time, what else we could include, because this is just so fun, and we'd love to do this again too in the future. So I just wanted to say that, and a special shout out to Katie, who put everything together, got everyone organized, produced this lovely and beautiful event for us to have this Saturday. So thank you, Katie. Just a little bit about Paloma Health for those who may not know. We're a virtual medical practice, and what that means is you can think of us just like any doctor's office that you would go into, but we only focus on hypothyroidism and thyroid care, and that also includes treating Hashimoto's. And everything that you do with Paloma, you can do from the inside of your home, from the comfort of your home, and also from online. So that includes testing your thyroid. We believe in a full thyroid panel so that you can have a real full, deep look into the whole picture of your thyroid, and that can help your provider to give you the best care as well. We also connect you with talented thyroid doctors, and Dr. Austin will be sharing in just a little bit some of her philosophies. And we also believe in a holistic approach to thyroid care. So in addition to the doctor care that we provide, a lot of our patients also benefit from nutritional therapy. So many folks that are dealing with thyroid conditions have a lot of questions about diet, what they can do to change, there's a lot of misinformation, and I think a lot of just noise out there around thyroid diet. So we try to streamline that and help folks also with things like, energy management and things like weight management as well. So let's, without further ado, I'd love to introduce Dr. Austin, who's an integrative and functional medicine physician. She's a physician with Paloma Health, and she just finished seeing some Paloma Health patients. So thank you so much for jumping from patient visits to joining us here. Dr. Austin is really passionate about getting to the root cause of patient disease and why people have health problems, whether it's thyroid or anything else, and is interested in all aspects of the patient story. And her passion is really to find to really do the search and find the solution to health problems. Dr. Austin has graduated with top honors from virtually everything you've ever done, I noticed. So top honors from undergrad in biochemistry and cellular biology from UCSF. You graduated with honors from your medical school at Loma Linda University and also won national awards in your residency. So quite the underachiever. Not only that, you've also have a dedication for healthy living, not just in your role as a physician, but also it's a lifestyle for you. You're Dr. Austin's an athlete and an advocate of healthy living, and has competed and won top placements in several triathlons, which I'm just super, super impressed with. And her story, I think, is really relevant to many of you. Dr. Austin was very sick as a child and has a family history of autoimmune conditions. And in her journey in feeling really sick, she had to seek her own answers because, maybe she'll comment, but wasn't readily available to her. And that's actually what drove her to become a physician and to practice medicine. So Dr. Austin only does virtual medicine. So that's really interesting and sort of an evolution, I think, to where care is going these days. So you're one of these pioneers. I'd love to hear more about that as we chat. And Dr. Austin specializes in functional medicine, like I said, and integrative care to get to the root of patients' issues. So let's get started. Did I miss anything about your background, first of all, Dr. Austin?
No, that was very thorough.
All right, great. Because you are a virtual physician primarily as of late, I'm curious about your feedback to patients around what they can expect from a virtual visit from a doctor in general, and then as it relates to thyroid health specifically.
Yeah, so I've been doing virtual medicine for about a year, and I've been pleasantly surprised at how fun it is and how you can actually really connect with people virtually. You wouldn't expect that, but it's actually so convenient. You don't have to wait in the waiting room. You don't have to expose yourself to sick people. You don't have to figure out where your kids are going to go or leave work. So I find it extremely convenient. I actually really, really enjoy it. Also, you're in a relaxed environment, you're in your own environment. So I honestly can't recommend it, more. And obviously, if somebody needs to be seen in person, we're going to recommend that. So yeah, I think it's great. I love it.
Awesome. And I'm sorry, I'm hearing some folks telling me that I have some sound issues. I don't think I was covering my mic. A better job not to. I think it was me. I can hear you fine, Dr. Austin, but thanks for letting me know.
Okay, good.
Trying not to cover my mic. So thank you and apologies for that. And then in terms of thyroid consultations on a virtually, are you able to do anything special for patients and get a good look at their thyroid? How does that look? And do you feel like that's, how that works generally with Paloma?
I mean, in general, it hasn't been an issue. I basically have them palpate their thyroid and kind of go, up to the microphone or up to the camera and show me their thyroid. If they aren't really sure they have any nodules or, feel that maybe there's some lymph nodes, I definitely have them see, their primary care doctor and perhaps have them order an ultrasound. But I have to say that pretty rarely comes up. So I haven't, found it to be a challenge or a barrier to virtual care.
Awesome. Let's talk about the state of thyroid care these days. Okay. So in 2018, the American Thyroid Association published a study of over 12,000 patients, asking them to rate their thyroid care. And patients rated their thyroid care a 5 out of 10, which is pretty dismal. Paloma Health, we also did a patient survey at December of 2019. And patients, a third of patients said it took them over 3 years to get diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which should be it should be a very simple test to do. So unfortunately that's happening. And people also rated the impact of their hypothyroidism as a 7 out of 10. So pretty significant impact to their daily lives. What would you say you're seeing as some of the main barriers of patient care, and kind of what you as a provider is doing to help address some of those?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I mean, I've been seeing patients for at least a decade, and I would say that a lot of people come in with low thyroid symptoms, and I'll look at their labs and they'll be just a little bit off. And the doctors that they've seen previously will say, you know what, that's still in the normal range. But meanwhile, they're actually not in the optimal range. And given their symptoms, I typically, of course, we're going to address the root cause and try to optimize their thyroid in other ways. But there are people who then I treat with medications, and they're so grateful, that they finally have been heard and that they're actually being treated, and they typically do feel better. Again, emphasizing that I'm still looking at the root cause and trying to optimize in other ways rather than just putting them on medications. But just knowing that the labs are not perfect, and that they're optimal ranges versus, the normal range. And then the second scenario that I see quite a lot are people who come in and they're on levothyroxine, and they're either not feeling well because of other factors going on that are affecting their thyroid, or the medication brand may have an additive in it that's irritating them. They may be reacting to it, or maybe they need a little bit of T3 therapy. And a lot of doctors are not using T3 therapy. And I will tell you that, again, in my 10 years of practice, seeing patients, that it can have a very significant impact in some patients. So I think it's worth trying. So yeah, those are the two biggest scenarios that I see.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for mentioning optimal range versus laboratory range. We get a lot of questions on that. And I don't think there's a clear answer. It's so patient dependent, and it's so physician dependent. Tell us more about what you look at when you see lab values, and kind of how you determine what's really optimal for a given patient, rather than just the numbers on the lab.
Well, first, the symptoms, primarily, I look at that. And then, as far as the TSH, I mean, if the TSH is like around a 3 or a 4, or even in the high 2 range, usually more 3 or 4 or above, and they have low thyroid symptoms, even though that's in the normal range, it's not really normal. I will typically treat it. I mean, we even know that, for infertility, we try to, for women who are trying to get pregnant, if their TSH is above 2.5, there is some evidence showing that if you lower it below 2.5 by treating with thyroid, they actually may become more fertile. So there's definitely an optimal range. And then there's the free T4 and free T3, which are a little bit less accurate, at least the free T3. But I still look at that, and they may be on the lower range of normal. So those are other clues, right? So it's not just you're within a normal range, because those are based on our population, and we don't really have the healthiest population, and everyone's different, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And thanks also for mentioning the different treatment options. We get this question a lot. And I just wanted to maybe have you explain to our audience some of the different treatment options, not only synthetic T4 and natural desiccated thyroid, but I think we've, as Paloma providers, also talked about the various different manufacturers of different synthetic options, natural desiccated or glandular options, and how some of those, how there's really not necessarily a right one size fits all, but that there's so many different options that people, should. Right? And then how can they work with their doctor to find the right one for them?
Yeah. So the standard of care right now is to use levothyroxine, or, T4 therapy, which the brand name is Synthroid. And of course, there's lots of generics. That means that it's the same drug, but there's different companies making the drug. And they do have different additives in the medication, depending on who's making the drug. And especially in Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, which is what 80% of women with hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's. In autoimmunity, there's a lot of sensitivities to additives, including gluten, and there's a bunch of other additives in there. And so there are certain companies that have less. In fact, for Paloma, we definitely look at that. And there are people who feel better on the brand name too. So we really pay attention to that when we're listening to our patients and treating them. And I think your second question was, what are other options for treatment as far as T3?
Yeah,
or
other options. How do the patient and doctor work together to find what's right for the patient?
Yeah, so sometimes it's a trial and error, honestly. I mean, you can look at the labs, but I do find it really has to do with the patient and listening to them and seeing how they're responding, and also trying to optimize their labs, but not just the labs, but also how they're feeling. And so there are some times, I wouldn't say it's the majority, but that some people feel better when you lower the T4 therapy slightly and add a little bit of T3, which is a little bit more activating, at a low dose. And you can typically use that once or twice a day. And even the brand there too, the brand or the generic company makes a difference. And I know that from personal experience and how it works. And then the other option, of course, are the, glandulars, which are extracts from typically a pig or a cow. And those are, brands are like Armor Thyroid, Nature Thyroid, and those are considered second line, most likely because they have less research. The ratio of hormone in those glandular drugs are different than the human ratio. And so there's some argument that that might not be optimal for humans. But I will say that some people just happen to feel better on those. And I haven't seen a lot of negative effects unless you're overdosing it. So again, that can be tried. And it really just depends on the person and how they're feeling and their preferences. And then of course there's compounding as well, which I try to stay away from just because you can't always count on the compounding. Every compounding pharmacy is different. But there are some people where they just prefer to compound it. It gets a little trickier and it does cost more money. So I typically use that as a last line.
Yeah. And it's amazing how, sensitive the thyroid is to getting it right. And sometimes maybe with compounding, it's, you can't always control what the pharmacy is doing and how precise they're getting each dose. So it's interesting how sensitive the thyroid is and how different all of us are to receiving various treatments. So there's not certainly a one size fits all. You mentioned, Dr. Austin, the gluten question has come up, I think, in several speakers today. You mentioned something that you talk to patients about. So in addition to medicine, what are the other things that you kind of have found really helpful in your practice in treating thyroid conditions? So like maybe with food and any other.
Yeah, well, having worked with autoimmune diseases for a long time, and Hashimoto's again is an autoimmune disease, it typically, not for everyone, but it could be triggered in the gut. 70% of your immune system is in the gut. And so I look a lot at the diet. We do know, gluten is always a question, and there are tests out there, of course, that you can run to see if you're sensitive to gluten. There's also the, autoimmunity to celiac disease, and there's gluten sensitivity, which are two separate things. And people who have Hashimoto's do have a higher risk of other autoimmune disorders, which includes celiac. So actually testing for that and screening for symptoms, although, lots of people with celiac have no symptoms, but testing for that can be really, really helpful, because if they have celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, you take them off gluten, it actually can dampen that immune response and can improve Hashimoto's. So I do look at that, and it doesn't mean that's everyone who has Hashimoto's, but I either have them, do a gluten-free trial where they cut it out probably at least 30 days and see how they feel. We can always recheck antibodies at that time and see if they've gone down, although it can take some time. And then also keeping in mind that here in the US, the gluten may be different than in Europe, especially for people who are gluten sensitive, not celiac disease. And so that's something we talk about. And then there are testing out there that you can do, a little bit more extensive testing on gluten antibodies through a lab called Cyrex Labs that I like to run, especially for people who like data and like to see the numbers. That can be very helpful. And then there's lots of other dietary factors that can be explored, right? There's the autoimmune paleo diet, which is more extreme. But there are people who feel better on that. And again, there's tests that I can run to help us narrow that down. As well as, elimination diets and seeing how people respond. But I'd say the top two inflammatory foods are typically, or top three, I would say, are sugar, dairy, and wheat. And so I definitely work on that. And then of course, there's lots of other things that play a role in the gut, like do they have bacterial overgrowth? Do they have, an overgrowth of yeast? How are they digesting? Are they breaking down their food? Do they have low acid in their stomach? So it really does take a comprehensive approach. And you do need to look at all of those things in order to improve, thyroid and autoimmunity. So do you want me to mention some of the other things that can cause hypothyroidism, or?
Well, I'm curious, just to follow
Yeah.
up. I think maybe there might be interest from our audience. Do you recall how much some of those antibody tests might run someone if they were interested in doing that?
I think the gluten panel, you know what, if I had to guess, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was like $250. Cyrex does reimburse with insurance, but you have to submit a super bill. So yeah, and like I said, a lot of times you can do an elimination diet, but there are people who like to see that data. And a lot of those tests, like celiac panel, the genetics for celiac disease, and some of the antibodies can be run through the general lab and can be covered by your insurance. So we don't, there's a lot of things that we can get covered through the insurance, and a lot of clues that we can get, right? Like you can check for low iron, and are you not absorbing well? And maybe that's has to do, that's a sign of somebody having a gut problem if they're not absorbing well. So there's a lot of things that you can work with through the insurance as well.
Great. And Paloma, our kit can be reimbursed through your HSA, FSA benefits if you have those, and then some insurances will reimburse it, but it's generally out of network. But we work with folks to help them submit their super bills as well for the Paloma thyroid panel. I have one last question, and then I thought we would take a few minutes. We're getting a number of questions from the audience, so maybe we can address some of them. But the last question that that we've been getting as a medical practice from folks, and of course we're in this sort of strange time, and a lot of people with Hashimoto's are concerned about going out into the world and feel like their immune system is going to make it it's making it more scary for them, and are they at a higher risk of maybe potentially catching COVID, and should they be doing anything different as sufferers with a thyroid condition
compared to the general population? So there's a blog article on that on our website, I believe, but having Hashimoto's does not mean that you're immunocompromised, like somebody who has an immunodeficiency or low white blood cells, or someone who's on chemotherapy. First of all, I would say, no, you're not at a higher risk just having Hashimoto's. Keeping in mind that people who have Hashimoto's or an autoimmune disease do have a higher risk for other autoimmune diseases. So if you have something like lupus or what else, MS, or some of these other things, and you're on drugs that are immunosuppressive, then obviously you're going to have a lower immune system. So no, in general, no. One sign of immunodeficiency, though, let's say you get, sinus infections all the time, you're constantly getting bronchitis, pneumonias, things like that, that's a sign and a trigger to me to check a patient for certain immunodeficiencies. So if you don't have that, it's pretty unlikely that you're specifically at a higher risk.
Yeah. So still wear a mask, do those things.
Yeah.
Nothing more.
Sleep, vitamin D, all the health support that I'm sure we've all kind of know about, hopefully. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of questions. I'm going to try to see if I can pull out some themes here. When switching between medication, someone just switched from a levothyroxine to Armour. Is it normal or common to hit a plateau after a few months? So someone saw initially a change in their symptoms and was feeling better, but then sort of has started to plateau and feels kind of some of the symptoms.
Yeah. I actually, I do see that quite a bit, especially with T3 therapy. So thyroid, or T3, the more active form of thyroid, is in Armour thyroid, right? It's a combo of T4 and T3. And it does kind of rev you up a little bit, and people feel better initially. And I think what's happening is that the receptors are either downregulating in the cells. I'm not completely sure, but I do see that people feel better initially, and I think it's kind of revving them up. And so then I start looking at, what are the other things that are happening? Are they low iron? Are they chronically stressed? Do they have high cortisol, which is plays a big role there? So I actually think that that's a sign that there's something else causing their symptoms. Mm-hmm. But of course, the other thing is you might want to increase the dose slightly, because the conversion is never totally clear. depending on what their labs show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of folks in our practice have a lot of the hypothyroid symptoms. Their TSH and some of the other markers are within the normal range, but their TPO antibodies may be through the roof or just slightly abnormal. And I know we see a lot of patients like that. What are some of the things that we can do for them to help sort of reduce that autoimmune attack on the thyroid causing the TPO antibodies?
So one, looking at the root cause, so working with the gut, looking at, nutritional deficiencies like selenium, zinc, looking at possible triggers. Was there an extremely stressful event? Stress plays a huge role. Some people even look at, infections, like we know that, potentially Epstein-Barr virus might play a role, H. pylori in the gut. What else? There's even some theories and some small research, looking at mercury. Is that playing a role? Are you eating a lot of fish with high mercury? Is that contributing to autoimmunity? So it really takes a comprehensive approach again, to try to get that down. And then selenium might play a role as well, maybe putting them on some supportive supplements. And then there are some people, I do put them on a low dose of thyroid, and they do feel a lot better while we're trying to work on this, as long as we're not overdosing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's an easy one. Do PPIs interfere with synthroid or cytomel absorption?
Yes, they can decrease the absorption.
And so do we recommend then spacing them out, or would you increase the dose?
Well, one, you do want to look at the labs as an indicator of if they are actually absorbing, so as to not overdose them. And yes, I would typically space. I try to take the thyroid at least 4 to 5 hours away from other medications, especially supplements, including iron, and other minerals. I would definitely take those at least 4 to 5 hours apart.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out why you're on the antacid, get to the root cause of that.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Absolutely. Great. Well, I think I just want to wrap up because we've got an excellent speaker teed up. And I wanted to thank you, Dr. Austin, and see if you have any sort of last parting thoughts to our thyroid population listening out there who may still be experiencing symptoms, may be struggling, into how they can approach sort of their next visit with their doctor to help them get feeling their best.
Yeah. So I think most doctors, they want to help their patients. And if you could just explain to your doctor, I'm really not feeling better. Is there any way we can tweak the dose? Can we add a little bit of T3? Like, is there anything that we can do to try to help, how I'm feeling? And if they're absolutely not interested, I would ask them to refer you somewhere else, or honestly find a different doctor, because there are lots of doctors out there that do want to help you with that. And just try to find a doctor that has an open mind and listens to your symptoms. That's what I would suggest. Yeah.
Thank you for those parting words. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I know our patients adore working with you, and I also really enjoy having you as part of the team. So thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to sit around and listen, and we'll talk soon, Katie. Thank you. We'll turn it over to Katie and Mccall Mcpherson, who's our next speaker.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. And like Dr. Austin just said, if your doctor isn't willing to work with you, it might be time to ask for a referral or find a new doctor. And I know Mary's going to share a little bit later about when it might be time to do that and how to do it gracefully so that you can really be in partnership with your doctor. So we've got Mccall Mcpherson up next. Mccall has her own history with mismanaged hypothyroidism, which has sort of kickstarted her on a journey. Mccall is the owner and chief hope giver at Thyroid Nation, and she's also the owner of Modern Thyroid Clinic, which is a thyroid clinic in Austin, Texas. She's going to share a little bit now about Medication 101, what you should know about thyroid medication. So I know we saw some questions come in. Mccall, you might have seen them also. So we'll let her talk, and then maybe she can answer some of those questions that came up from you. So Mccall, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks. I really appreciate you all having me here today. And I really appreciate what you guys do, because it puts so much power and ability into patients who feel powerless. So it's really a pretty special thing. And I think the more knowledge that people can get, the better. So thank you all for being here today and for participating. In summary, I could sum up my belief about thyroid treatment and addressing thyroid disorders essentially as if you have the right medication at the right dose at the right time, you should really no longer have thyroid symptoms. You won't get there, overnight, but that should really be the goal, is being symptom free. In my practice of, at Modern Thyroid Clinic, I feel like there's not a one size fits all approach as far as medication goes. I really feel like, biochemistry has to be perfect. Labs are an absolutely enormous and essential part of that. So getting people to perfect lab values in the shortest amount of time using medication, as whatever medication is necessary, is my modality. A lot of people think, oh, well, desiccated thyroid is the answer, or only T3 is the answer. And truly, I find that there isn't one answer. It's really that your biochemistry has to be perfect, and you have to harness the power of using labs and collecting data, just like Dr. Austin said, to get you there. And really, I want you guys to leave with a lot of pearls today. I want you to leave with a lot of things that people don't necessarily know about thyroid treatment, about thyroid management, and I definitely want to leave a lot of time for questions. So first thing that I educate my patients about, that I feel like it is imperative that you all know, is there's not actually a standardized range for what's normal and what's acceptable for thyroid labs, or really a lot of labs in general. Okay, so when your doctor, he or she, looks at your labs, they get the results back, they hold up the piece of paper, and really they just kind of scan it and see if anything's in bold or off to the side. If there isn't anything in bold or off to the side, it's presumed that your labs are normal, that A, you don't have a thyroid problem, or B, that, hey, your medication's just fine. You shouldn't, your fatigue, your brain fog, your weight gain, it's not thyroid related. It's something totally different, right? The problem with that is multifaceted. Okay, so one, there's not a standardized range, which right out of the gate leaves a lot of room for interpretation. So you understand the extent of that. Even between different lab locations, their normal ranges are different. So Quest Lab by my office in a suburb of Austin is different than Quest Lab 10 minutes down the road, is different than LabCorp. So even between locations, right? So that's one issue. When a lot of these labs formulate their ranges, they're not excluding people with the diagnosis they're trying to rule out, right? So a lot of people are lumped in together, and it makes a range too wide. So that's another issue. And so we really need to hone in on the ranges. We got to get your treatment. My treatment numbers are extraordinarily narrow, and I've only gotten there over many, many years of clinical practice. So, know that your goal is not to even be in the middle part of the range. You got to get really nitty gritty. I'm working on my next round of my thyroid lab guide, which I'm happy to give you guys, and I can get it to Paloma Health whenever I finish it. And you guys, I'm sure, can get it from them. But it'll tell you what labs I use, what ranges they're in, all of that. So that's very, very pertinent information. Without lab data, you can't get your life back. You can't get to the end point without the data that you need to get you there. Then, I'll tell you, when we think of the next step to the barrier of getting proper thyroid treatment, certainly different types of medication. And as Dr. Austin spoke about, there are various kinds. The vast majority of people with thyroid conditions, as you know, as most of you on here probably are on levothyroxine. Levothyroxine, Synthroid, Tirosint, Unithroid, that's all what's called T4, like Dr. Austin said. I call those medications 100% conversion dependent. So they are dependent on your ability to activate them to make them usable. And in fact, levothyroxine is the #1 most prescribed medication in America, not just for thyroid disorders, like this is overall. So this is a medication that is very widely being used, and it's difficult for many people to actually activate it. So that's where places like Modern Thyroid Clinic, Dr. Austin, Paloma, places that are open to medications that involve some form of active thyroid hormone therapy. Of all the patients in Modern Thyroid Clinic, I have one that's on a T4 only medication. All the rest are on some form of T3. So if that's an indication of percentages of, even rough percentages of people who need some form of active thyroid hormone, that's it. You know, the vast majority of people need support. They need help getting to that final step of what I call your gasoline or active hormone. You know, a couple really important things to think about in regards to treatment, in regards to feeling your best, that I've found over the years. One is any medication with T3 in it should always be dosed twice a day. So what happens is a lot of people are given T3 like Armour or Cytomel or NP thyroid, and they're taken off of their levothyroxine. They're immediately put on the equivalent dose of Armour. And this can kind of speak to a question that came earlier. And they feel very overstimulated and jittery. Well, what's happened is the half-life of their levothyroxine is 10 days. So that's in their body for 10 days. Armour, a large portion of that is active. So they've doubled their dose. So a lot of you who think maybe, hey, I tried Armour or Cytomel, I can't tolerate it. It makes me feel terrible, incredibly anxious. Really, you just doubled your medication dose in one day. It wasn't your fault. Your doctor or your provider probably doesn't have any idea. So that's one issue. You have to slowly go on those medications as your levothyroxine wears off. Secondly, you have to dose them twice a day, in the morning and around 2 to 3 p.m. If you're on Cytomel, NP, or Armour, and you hit a wall at 3 p.m. every day, it's because the T3 in your medication has worn off. Question or comments so far from the team? We good? Can I keep going? All right. So, you know, another thing that I want you guys to consider, and this is huge when it comes to labs, is you have to get a standardized way of collecting lab data in regards to your medication. Okay, so I have a lot of patients come to me at Modern Thyroid Clinic who've been on Armour, for example, for 5 years, and they've collected labs sometimes on their Armour, sometimes off their Armour. Well, the T3 in your Armour, the active component, the gasoline component, peaks and it troughs in 6 to 8 hours. If you take your Armour once a day and you go in the morning before you take your medication, you're going to have a very big lull of your T3. It will always artificially look low because you're making decisions about what to do with your medication while you're off your medication. So what I have my patients do is always go at the peak of their medication so I can protect them from over-medication of T3. So that's one idea. Another one of the clinicians at my practice, who is very well known and respected, has people go 6 to 8 hours in, but it always must be standardized, okay? So think about that. If your doctor says it doesn't matter, do whatever, definitely you want to take your medication. The biggest risk that I see in the thyroid community for over-medication of active thyroid hormones, which is the reason why a lot of doctors don't use them, is going to get your labs tested off of medication. So that's another pearl for you. Most people, if you're on 90 milligrams of Armour in the morning right now and you feel awesome, but you're crashed at 4 p.m., most people don't need the half of that each time. They don't need 45. They need kind of to slowly over the course of several months get to almost a repeat dose here as they have here. So don't think it's as simple as splitting your dose because you'll be a little under-medicated. Let's see, I'm trying to think. I don't want to get too heavy into biochemistry because I want to leave you guys some questions. Another issue that can happen, if you are running into the problem where you're on Armour, you feel better than levothyroxine, but you don't feel great, right? You might have just enough of a conversion issue where you need a small amount of Cytomel or liothyronine in addition to your Armour. So Armour or desiccated thyroid, NP, WP, nature thyroid, is 75% inactive hormone and 25% active hormone. If you don't activate your hormones well enough, that'll never quite get you to where you need to be. And that probably accounts for 65% of my practice. 65% can't quite handle the amount of T4 to T3 in a desiccated thyroid form. So again, that's not the answer for everyone. And I love Armour. I'm on Armour. That's what gave me back my life for sure. But keep in mind, if you fail treatment with it, you might need more, or you might need an additional medication. Let's see. I will wait and let them ask me questions of whatever you guys feel like I should answer from Paloma over there.
Yeah, Mccall, if you feel ready for a couple questions, we definitely have some happening in the chat here.
Go for it.
I think there may be a little bit of confusion. I'm not sure. I'm just going to read this question verbatim. So she just said she would come up with new ranges she's coming up with. Does she have current ones, and why the change again?
Oh yeah, so can I tell you? Yeah, so basically I established my initial ranges when I started my thyroid niche years ago. I based them on research that excluded people with hypothyroidism, family history, and symptoms. When labs lump people together in a group, they don't exclude people with the condition that they're trying to rule out. So that's one issue. So I started with that set of research. Every 6 months since then, I have the highest percentage of thyroid patients in the state of Texas. So that allows me to get an incredible amount of data about where thyroid patients actually don't have symptoms anymore. So every 6 months, I took this range and I narrowed it, and now I'm left with a range that's like this wide. And I just did another revision. So I truly find if I can get patients into my range, they get their life back. This is a predictable, controllable condition. This is not like a nuanced thing where, hey, you just got to get really lucky to get well again. No, this is science. If you have lab data and it's done well and you treat people with the right medications at the right dose, they should no longer have thyroid symptoms.
Mm-hmm. And what I hear you saying a lot of is like partnering with your, like really partnering with your doctor to optimize your thyroid. Because of course, not everyone can visit you in Austin, but, or visit us even, but like finding a doctor who you trust, like we've talked about, and really partnering on like asking hard questions and not settling for feeling bad. Another question,
harnessing these opportunities. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Getting more education.
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing a couple questions about absorption. Can you talk about absorption? Does it make a difference to take Armour on an empty stomach?
Yeah.
And when should you eat after taking it?
So let's talk about that. I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell my patients. So obviously I have my patients all on T3 of some form in the morning and around 2 to 3 p.m. In the morning, you know, it's super easy. First thing in the morning, full glass of water, wait 30 minutes to an hour before you eat anything else. Well, the afternoon is always more complicated. I am a clinician that values reality over perfectionism. So what I tell my people is, look, you do not have to live in a vacuum for my thyroid treatment to work. There's actually plenty of built-in room for error in this. So, you know, plan to 80-90% of the time, take it a couple hours after lunch, couple hours before dinner. But sometimes if you take it with food, I don't really care. You know, you'll lose 20% of absorption. 80% that you'll get is so much better than the loss that you'll miss from trying to get it rigidly perfect all the time and just foregoing your afternoon dose or missing it altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that's probably helpful to the chat, and people, please feel free to ask more questions if that's unclear. I've seen a couple things come through. We've probably got time for maybe 2 more questions. Seen a couple of things come through asking about the autoimmune component. And one specific question is, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's 5 years ago, but my labs have always been normal. So now I've never been medicated, even though I have low thyroid symptoms. How is this possible? And even if our labs are normal, should I be on medication to help?
My response to that is, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. Your labs aren't normal. They're not within a true optimal range. And you likely have significant hypothyroidism. And what I find in my clinical practice is it is an average of 10 years before someone's labs will drift far enough outside of range for their regular doctor to tell them they're abnormal. And that is devastating for women.
Thank you for addressing that. Okay, see a couple more coming through here. One is, what are the common reasons that people move from Levo to Armour? Which might also be a question about why would you transition from one medication to another?
Yes, so I'll do a very brief version of this, and then you can go to my YouTube or you can Google my name and why levothyroxine doesn't work. And that'll give you a very long explanation of this. The reason is because ubiquitously, every patient that comes in my door at Modern Thyroid Clinic either doesn't convert their own T4, their own crude oil hormone, or levothyroxine to gasoline. So it's basically unusable. We can't put crude oil in our car, but we need it to make gasoline to put in our car. Those people are just stockpiling crude oil in their garage the whole time their gas tank is on empty. They have no actual energy production. Armour has actual gasoline hormone in it. It has some crude oil, it's got some gasoline, so you get a good balance between the two, and it can be really, really life-changing for people.
Awesome, thank you. I know Mary also just put out a deep dive course on levothyroxine, which might be interesting because like you said, it might work for some people and it might not work for others, and we need to find what's specific to us. But we will make sure that everyone sees that course afterwards so that they can learn more about Levo. Okay, we're gonna take one more question. It's not medication specific, but I think you might be able to help. It is, I don't have Hashimoto's, but I had an eating disorder, which I think caused hypothyroidism. I've had 3 doctors dismiss me, one functional doc, that believes I'm okay now, but I'm still feeling sick. A new doc wants to check my heart and my lungs, but I think it's thyroid due to symptoms. And then lists some of our standard hypothyroidism symptoms. Where would you go next?
Yeah. I think I'm going to give you guys, I'll just verbally tell you guys my ranges so that she can take her ranges and compare them. You know, it's such valuable information for people. And then also, you know, if you get to a point where you don't find answers with the information you're getting, especially in the case of a history of an eating disorder, you might want to be sure you additionally check reverse T3, because that is an important hormone that can be elevated in cases of restrictive eating. So my ranges are TSH, and you guys can write this down, or always should be well below 2, ideally closer to 1. Sometimes people don't feel well until it's less than 1. Free T4 should be between 0.9 and 1.2. Anything above 1.2 tells me your body's bogged down with too much crude oil. Free T3 should be between 3.6 and 4.0. Reverse T3 should be always below 15, ideally below 12. So those are good functional ranges for people to be able to be like, my doctor says I'm fine. My labs look like this. I'm not fine. I need to go deeper. So hopefully that'll be helpful.
One note I might make, just so people are sort of aware, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not a doctor. Those are your ranges. I do think it's important to note that some labs use different units of measurement, and that might change the number, which
Smart.
I saw something recently, someone had said, my number is like so different.
Way off, right. Yes, they absolutely can.
So just a note to everyone that is possible. I'm seeing, it says, what are those ranges again? I will have Mccall send those to me, and we'll send those to you afterwards. And then I have one more note. Oh, our thyroid test kit includes TSH, free T3, free T4, and TPO antibodies as an initial start. And I just wanted to reference reverse T3 really quick. We start with those 4 because we think it gives a pretty comprehensive look at the thyroid function. And then if it is necessary, like you've mentioned, in specific instances, we are able to test, you know, nutritional deficiencies or reverse T3, et cetera. So I just wanted to throw those thoughts out there to everyone that's participating. Mccall, do you have anything final you want to share before we say thank you?
Yeah, you know, one thing that I would say is there's so much hope in this. People come to my practice truly debilitated all the time, and they leave with highly functioning, vital lives. Don't stop until truly you get your life back. Like, there is no reason to still have thyroid symptoms. I believe that. I see it. I'm living proof of it. So keep fighting for your health and keep fighting for hope.
Mccall, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of that information. Up next, we've got Dr. Emily Kyberd, who is a chiropractor and movement specialist and has been through her own journey of getting her Hashimoto's into remission. And through it, she's turned her experience into a program called Thyroid Strong. And today she's going to take us through a little bit of movement. So if you want, get up and get ready to move a little bit. Emily's here with her darling baby, and I will let her take it from here.
Hey there, how's it going?
Pretty good. Thanks for being here.
I adore Mccall. She is such a wealth of knowledge. I've known her for a couple years, so great to have her on. You know, I think I just want to emphasize, like, one of the things of, like, why to work out, right? So 2 of the biggest struggles, especially with an underactive thyroid, hypothyroidism, along with the autoimmune component of Hashimoto's, is weight gain and fatigue. right? And so we get really motivated to work out, and then we're like, we crash, right? We feel like we were hit by a bus for a couple of days. We feel, you know, I've had women who feel like they can't even get out of bed for a couple of days. And I think it's important to really emphasize that exercise is important, and we're all on a different place in our journey. So some of us might be in that more kind of acute phase where we have high thyroid antibodies, and just like, even just going to the bathroom feels like a journey. Getting out of bed, going to the bathroom feels like a journey. But it's really important with an underactive thyroid, we have low muscle mass. And muscle is important because it is anti-inflammatory. It is the organ of longevity. It is our metabolic engine. So we have to challenge our capacity to stimulate the muscle. So for a normal person, right, someone without a thyroid condition, working out a couple times a week, 3 times a week, they'll probably maintain their muscle mass. And with an underactive thyroid, that maintenance of muscle mass is harder. Like, it's just harder to keep the meat on the bones. Another thing just to point out is with hypothyroidism, we have slower tendon turnover. And what does that mean? All of our tissue is regenerating and turning over and replenishing to make new tissue, just naturally. And with an underactive thyroid, it's slower. So we are more prone to tendon injuries. So like in the front of the knee, the patellar tendon, you know, people with Hashimoto's will get a lot of knee pain. And part of it is just the nature of the thyroid hormones, but also just we have slower tendon turnover. The other thing I wanted to point out that I noticed clinically, and there hasn't been any research done on it, but I've noticed it clinically, is this component of hypermobility, right? The joints are overly mobile. So like if you stood and you looked from the side, you might see your knees kind of go back behind your ankles. Or if you were in like a down dog, you might be the person who, like, the instructor comes around, is like, put a little bend in your elbows. Another one might be like being able to touch your thumb to your forearm, or to be able to like bend your pinky back beyond 90 degrees. So these are just examples of hypermobility that shows up in the body. And why that's important is because with Hashimoto's, we get joint pain and muscle aches, right? And so I think our natural tendency is, I got to go get a massage, or I need to stretch, right? To work out that muscle tension. And if you're already hypermobile or have tissue laxity, when you stretch, it's going to make you more mobile, right? And we want to create stability and strength in the joints. We want to create integrity. And so I like, my default is strength training. You can see my kettlebells back over there. And, you know, a lot of the women with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, I'll pull them off of their yoga and their stretching routine, and they will feel so much better, like so much better. And at first things will feel tight, but that is actually creating integration. Another just important reason why to specifically strength train is because the joint pain that shows up with Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism is typically in the extremities, in the legs and the arms, right? So lots of shoulder pain. If you've ever had a frozen shoulder, which is basically like your shoulder is kind of like glued, like even just lifting your arm overhead to wash your hair or put your arm in the jacket, there is contracture of the capsule around the shoulder joint. And that contracture, frozen shoulder, there's studies that show people with a frozen shoulder have an elevated TSH. Same thing, a lot of people have bilateral knee pain. So the strength training really helps create that integrity and stimulates the muscle so that so can we feel better in our body, right? There's thyroid hormones in our muscle tissue. So when you stimulate the muscle tissue, you have turnover your thyroid hormone. I like to do low reps. So, you know, sometimes we're like, okay, 3 sets of 15. I like to do low reps. I like to take a long rest break in between. And I default to heavier so that I don't feel like I'm doing lots of reps and burning out. I also like to default to functional movements. So when I talk about strength training, it's not like bicep curls, it's deadlifts, squats, a push, a pull, a lunge, some sort of carry. So I'm going to go through just some of those and just really kind of dial in form for some of those to avoid lifting and hyperextending the joints. And I know a lot of people do not have weights at home, right? And even if they wanted to get weights, there was like a kettlebell shortage because of what's going on and in these times. So that's why I have my baby, because there's this great Arthur Ashe quote, which is start where you are, use what you have and do what you can, right? So I'm going to use her, even though I have some kettlebells over there. She's about 20 pounds. And, you know, I think as women with a thyroid condition or Hashimoto's, we sometimes think like it has to be perfect to get results, but it doesn't, right? Like I have to have the right weight. I have to like do the perfect amount of reps and sets, but it doesn't. The results come from doing the basics consistently over time, right? So the basics consistently over time. So I'm just gonna break down some form of 4 moves that I have my women in my Thyroid Strong program, which is my online program. And I'm gonna use my baby just to go off of use what you have. I would normally use a little bit heavier weight. She's 20 pounds, but for the sake of this, and just to encourage and inspire women to just use what you have. So we're gonna do a deadlift. We're gonna do a walkout push-up with a modification, because I know push-ups can be just like really hard in general. We're gonna do a squat, and I'm gonna give a modification for the squat. We're gonna squat to a chair, right? Because sometimes when we squat the tush below the knees, below 90, sometimes we get knee pain. We eventually wanna get there, but there's a great way to, you know, squat your seat to a chair and then start to work your butt below 90. And then the last thing we're gonna do is probably a lunge. And I'll give some modifications too, especially with the knee pain component. All right, so she's very excited for this. This is Brooklyn. Okay. All right, so we're gonna start with a deadlift. So you're gonna step, oh, you can't see my head. Heyo. Let's see. All right, let's see if that works. So you're gonna step your feet outer hip width. You're gonna turn your toes out to like 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock. So sometimes if you keep your feet parallel, it will hyperextend your knees, okay? So we're just gonna go through 4 moves and just like some form and cueing. So you're gonna step your feet outer hip width. Toes are not gonna be parallel. They're gonna be a little turned out, okay? So let's say your weight was on the floor here. You're gonna send your hips back, knees right over your ankles. Come here, little boo. Okay, you're gonna grab your weight and notice I have a nice long back. You're gonna stand up. You're gonna squeeze your butt. All right, you're gonna send those back. Take a breath in. You're gonna exhale, squeeze your butt. You're not pushing your hips so far forward that you're like this. You're just gonna get stacked. All right, we're gonna do 2 more. Take a breath in. You're gonna stand up, squeeze. Do 1 more. Breath in, stand up, squeeze. Okay? So that would be a deadlift. So as I'm standing up, I really squeeze my tush to avoid that hyperextension in the knees. So we're gonna do a push-up. I'm gonna give a modification, but let's do it here. Okay. Yes, you're gonna come this way. So you send your hips back. You're gonna come to the top of the plank. We don't want the booty pop. You're gonna tuck your tailbone under. Nice long arms. You're gonna take a breath in. You're gonna slow lower down. Your thumb should line up with your armpits. And then you're gonna push yourself up onto knees. Tuck your toes, straight legs. So push out through your heels. Tuck your tailbone, nice long spine. Take a breath in. Slow lower down. Knees stay down. Pushing back up. We're gonna just do 2 more. Don't crawl under there. Lower the knees. Nice long back. Push. We'll just do 1 more. Great. And then you can walk it back up to stand. All right. Here we go. Yeah. So typically I would do like 5 deadlifts, and then depending on where I am with like the baseline of where we're starting, like if you've never done a push-up, I do 1 push-up, then I do 5 more deadlifts, and then 2 push-ups. So it creates this progressive overload. We're slowly building up strength. All right, so now we're gonna do squats with child. All right, come here, little boo. All right. Okay, so we're gonna start more basic. So you can squat to a chair. So same thing, feet are gonna be outer hip width, toes are gonna get, thank you for the kisses, turned out to 1 and 11. And you wanna think you're gonna bend at your knees and the hips at the same rate. You're gonna stand up, you're gonna squeeze. What you don't wanna do is the butt goes first, or the knees go first. You wanna think like you're pulling yourself down to the floor, and stand back up, squeeze. If that's like, you're like, no, I got that. Let's progress on. You're gonna have your butt go below 90. So notice I have like a nice long back. I'm not hyperextended. So think of this as like your vertical plank. So you're gonna slow lower down. You're gonna stand and squeeze. You want your knees not to collapse in, right? So 1 more time. And stand back up, squeeze. All right, so that would be squats. I'm just gonna show 1 more move. I know we just have a couple minutes. I'm just gonna do a couple lunges with the modification. Woo. All right, so let's do this. Starting here, I like to lean a little bit forward so I don't overarch my back. Taking a breath, lower down, 90, 90. Stand back up, squeeze. Here we go. All right. So those would be like the basic 4 that I start with. I know a lot of women with Hashimoto's, when they do a lot of cardio, they feel really tanked, like really fatigued. So I like to progress the deadlifts eventually up to a kettlebell swing for them to get that runner's high endorphin release. So yeah, so that's all in Thyroid Strong. And yeah.
Awesome. Emily, that was awesome. And I think we can all agree that Brooklyn might be the most well-behaved baby of all time.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here. And if people want to learn more about Thyroid Strong or about your clinic, where can they find you?
DrEmilyKyberd.com. So drEmilyKyberd.com.
Awesome. And I think we've shared that link in the chat there so people can find you
you.
there. Okay, have a great day. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye.
Awesome. And up next, guys, we have Mary Showman, which is very exciting for us. Mary is a New York Times bestselling author of 15 different books on health and wellness. She's won awards for her patient advocacy. she's done a lot. She's a powerhouse. She spends a lot of her time now educating and sharing online with her community of, I think it's close to like 250,000 people. It might even be higher than that, but a lot of people. So Mary's going to share a bit about patient advocacy and how to stand up for yourself as a patient. And then we're going to open up to some Q&As. So start to type in the chat there and we will answer as many questions as we have time for.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
We can hear you.
Great, perfect. Well, what I wanted to talk about today is to give you some thoughts about how you can tell that it's time to get a new thyroid practitioner. And I've been out in this field for more than 20 years, talking with thousands of thyroid patients every year, connecting with them online, in person, by phone, during coaching, emails. I get more emails probably than anyone I know from thyroid patients who are frustrated. And there are some themes that keep coming up over and over again. And if you recognize your doctor or your healthcare provider in some of the things I'm going to tell you, that's a sign that it's time to make a change. So first of all, if you have a doctor that tells you in response to symptoms, you say, look, I'm tired, I can't lose weight, I'm losing my hair, I'm feeling brain fogged, I'm constipated, I can't get pregnant, I have no pizzazz in the bedroom, whole long list of all sorts of symptoms, and you're told, well, you're stressed, depressed, PMS, or menopausal, it's a good sign that it's time to jump out. Because stress, depression, and PMSing are not diagnoses. They are not to be, it's not valid to make that diagnosis without looking for some of the root causes of these kinds of symptoms. So if you have a doctor that continually dismisses everything by trying to hand you a Prozac prescription, it's time to take a look at making a change. Another sign is the doctor, and I think Mccall gave us a really good overview of this, the doctor that says to you, well, your labs are normal, so it can't be your thyroid problem. Well, what does normal mean? Normal means a different thing to different practitioners. Some doctors feel like anything that falls in the lab range is normal. Others are looking for those optimal levels. Some are looking at comparing what you've done in the past versus where you are now. But anyone who looks at your labs and just declares everything's normal, so it can't be your thyroid, is not diving deep enough and is not really partnering with you for optimal thyroid care. Another one is, I can tell you don't have a thyroid problem because fill in the blank, because you're not overweight, or you're not over 40, or you're not losing your hair, or you're not depressed, or you're not puffy, or any one of a number of symptoms. They can't tell by looking at you that you don't have a thyroid problem. I had a patient that I was doing coaching with. She was a military dentist, so she was very smart, healthcare provider herself. She was gaining weight. She knew she had a thyroid problem. She had a goiter. In fact, her thyroid was very enlarged. She went to a doctor and she happened to be very slender. And the doctor said, well, you don't have a thyroid problem. You're not overweight. And she said, no, I have this goiter and I have a family history and I want to get my thyroid checked. Well, the doctor said no. He refused to test her. So she had to jump out of the military healthcare system and see a private doctor who tested her antibodies, tested her thyroid, TSH, free T4, free T3. And sure enough, she had antibodies that were through the roof, showing that she had Hashimoto's, and a TSH over 20. So once she got tested and diagnosed and treated, she felt back to herself. So that idea of, I can tell you don't have a thyroid problem, a good sign that it's time to make a change. Another situation where if your doctor says, I categorically refuse to test T3 or test your free T3, and I refuse to use T3 medications, and I don't touch natural desiccated thyroid, well, that tells you that you have a one-size-fits-all doctor. You have a doctor that's basically looking to put you into a box, and if you don't fit in the box, well, too bad, we're not going to really be able to help you. So if you have a doctor that's limiting your options right from the get-go, I don't do this test, I don't give this medication, I won't work with that particular treatment, that's a good sign that it's time to expand your horizons and find someone who will really partner with you for better care. Another one is the doctors who will say thyroid has nothing to do with weight gain. I've heard this one so many times. For 25 years, I've had people say to me, you know what? I was thin as a rail, and all of a sudden I started gaining weight. And I went into the doctor and I said, I think I have a thyroid problem. And the doctor said, well, you're looking for medication. You're looking for excuses. You're looking to blame something. And you don't have a thyroid problem. It has nothing to do with weight. Most people only gain a couple of pounds here and there. I had a marathon runner that I was coaching. She was running like 50 miles a week out on the streets all the time, pounding the pavement. She was eating the cleanest, lowest carb, paleo diet, all organic, all grass-fed proteins. I mean, she was eating as clean as could be. I don't think she was going over 14 or 1,500 calories a day. She could not lose a pound. And in fact, she was actually gaining 2 and 3 and 4 pounds a week. And she said, I'm defying physics. How is this happening? It doesn't even make any sense scientifically. And she tried to get her thyroid checked. Her doctor said, well, you're a runner, you're healthy, you don't have a thyroid problem. And she's like, no, I cannot lose weight, and I need to lose another 10 pounds to get to running weight, etc. Doctor completely ignored her. She jumped out, went to a different doctor, got properly tested, and it turned out she was very hypothyroid. She had a TSH of about 16, 17, something like that. And once she got on treatment, it's not that the weight miraculously fell off, but her diet and her exercise and her running started to work. And she slowly took that weight off and got back to a healthy weight. So if you have one of those doctors that's telling you that your symptom, which is a classic thyroid symptom, whether it's weight, fatigue, hair loss, brain fog, depression, anxiety, all of the common thyroid symptoms, if they're saying, oh, that has nothing to do with your thyroid, it's time to make a change. Another sign that you really probably need to find a different partner in your healthcare are the doctors who say, I'm the doctor, you're the patient, or beware of the internet, or the worst combination of both. I'm the doctor, you're the patient, and stop Googling. Because they don't really want patients that ask questions. They don't want patients that understand their situation. And frankly, a lot of us are in situations where we might get 4 to 7 minutes of a doctor's attention. And they're rushing so quickly through those appointments that we barely get a moment to ask even 1 or 2 questions. And so the fewer the questions, the less knowledgeable the patient, the easier it is for some of these doctors, quite frankly. So if you have a doctor that doesn't want your questions and discourages you from knowing information about your condition and doing your own research, that's not a good sign. So, and it's actually, it is a good sign that it's time to find a new doctor. And then there's also doctors that blame you for when things aren't going well. I'm thinking of one patient that I heard about, and she had been taking her thyroid medicine, and she went back to her doctor, and her TSH was about 80. And the doctor said, well, obviously you're non-compliant. And that's doctor speak for you're not taking your medication. And she said, I'm taking it every day exactly the way you told me. I take it in the morning on an empty stomach. I wait several hours before I do vitamins. I don't take it with coffee or calcium fortified juice. I am doing it exactly the way you said. Doctor said, can't possibly be. Your TSH wouldn't be 80. And she kept going back, and she was profoundly hypothyroid, very sick, really struggling. And eventually the doctor said, all right, I'm putting you in the hospital to observe you, because he thought that she was like a Lifetime movie, some Munchausen by proxy case who was lying about her health so that she could get extra attention. So they put her in the hospital. The nurses watched her take her thyroid medicine, and they were checking her thyroid levels, and it was still 80. And it was still 80. And they said, wait a minute, something is going on. You know, she wasn't lying. She's actually taking it and it's not working. Well, it turned out that she had a malabsorption syndrome. They switched her over to liquid levothyroxine. And within a day, her TSH started to show a response. And about 2 weeks later, she was back to a TSH level of about a 2 and feeling great. So she was on the wrong kind of levothyroxine, but the doctor's reaction for months was to blame her. and to claim that she wasn't even taking her meds, and she knew she was. So all of this is to say, you are the CEO of your own health. Your doctor is your partner. And if you're a CEO, you want to have great team of people working with you. You want to have smart people doing operations, and smart people doing marketing, and smart people doing all of your sales. But you are in charge, and you are the one that's coordinating and directing this particular enterprise. And in the case of your thyroid and your health, the enterprise is you, and you are in charge. And that means you need to find the best people to work with you, the best partners. As I think Mccall said, and several of our other advocates and experts said, this is not a one-size-fits-all operation. We can't, if it was that easy, we would have a computer program that you put your TSH in and it spits out a prescription, and who would need to have a human doctor? It would be so simple, and it's not that simple. It requires a certain amount of finesse, a certain amount of personal attention. I mean, we heard what Mccall was saying about really working with the patients to try to find that sweet spot, to get you into that right place where things really do work. So you are unique, and it is not a one-size-fits-all. We cannot just cookie cutter rubber stamp everybody with the same medication or the same treatment. And that goes for everything from the Synthroid and the Levoxyl and the Tirosint and Levothyroxine drugs to the natural thyroid, because we have doctors in the holistic and integrative space who try to tell everybody that, oh, you only should take natural thyroid. And that's not the case either, because I have a lot of people say to me, Mary, you've been doing this for 20 years. You tell me, really, between you and me, what's the best thyroid medicine? What's really the best one? What do you take? What do you like? And what do you think really is the best? And I tell them in person exactly what I tell people during coaching and in programs and in my books. I say the same thing. The best thyroid medicine for you is the one that safely works best for you, period. I don't care which brand, which generic, which combination. It can be any one of these things, but it's going to be something that safely works best for you to resolve your symptoms. And it isn't cookie cutter. It isn't one size fits all. And we are patients, we are human beings, we are not lab values, and we are not all one size fits all human beings where everybody's going to respond to the same approach. We're starting to understand so much more about DNA. A lot of patients are now doing 23andMe testing to identify some of the genetic variances that make us more likely to need T3 as part of our therapy. And there are tests to check for deiodinase deficiencies that make it very difficult for us to convert the T4 to T3. There are all sorts of biological components, physiological components, and then there's nutrition, there's atmosphere, there's the things all around us that all have an impact on how we absorb our medication, which medications we need, what we'll respond to, and what we won't. Even something as simple as, do you want to drink coffee in the morning with your thyroid meds? Can make a difference to what you're doing. We were talking before about the ingredients that you'd find in thyroid medications. Well, some of them contain acacia, which can make people who have pollen allergies and hay fever have a sensitivity. That some of them have lactose. Some of the natural thyroid drugs are sensitivity inducing for people who have allergies to pork. So we are all different, and we're all unique, and it's up to us to advocate for ourselves to find that medication that safely and best helps resolve our symptoms. And the way we do that is by partnering with the right kind of practitioners. And oftentimes, unfortunately, in today's world, that means that we have to jump out of our traditional model, the doctor that does your primary care, or your OBGYN that you see for your hormone kinds of concerns and things. And even endocrinologists are not always going to be the people that are going to be the best to follow and monitor your hypothyroidism, unless it's an endocrinologist who really takes a passion and interest for thyroid care itself. So I guess my point for thyroid patients in general is that we are unique individuals. We are not simply lab results on a piece of paper. We are people with symptoms and different responses and different symptom packages that are affecting us and different needs. And so part of our job is to go in and find those practitioners who are willing to spend the time to help us, who are willing to answer the questions that we have, and who are up to speed on the latest in thyroid care and thyroid knowledge and thyroid understanding. I mean, you know, there are still doctors out there who think that Armour thyroid and Nature thyroid is made from cows, which, by the way, it's not. There are doctors who are still out there talking about synthetic thyroid as if it's the only option, and they'll tell you that natural thyroid drugs are non-prescription, and they're still prescription. They are prescription drugs. So there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of archaic ideas that go back 20 and 30 years from doctors who haven't kept up with the latest information. And so really, it's kind of incumbent on thyroid patients to find and connect with those practitioners that know what they're doing. And not all of them do. And that's why I'm really excited about what Paloma is doing, because they are bringing together some of those practitioners that do have that passion and do have that interest and are up to speed on what's going on with hypothyroidism, so that they can really team up with patients. They're not sitting there in their ivory towers, you know, telling you, okay, this is what the guidelines said from 12 years ago, and I'm going to apply it to you. No, they're listening, they're understanding, and they're talking with so many thyroid patients so that they are really, they've got their finger on the pulse of what is working in real time with the patient community. So to me, it's a long overdue development that I'm so excited to see and to be part of. And I'm thrilled about this group, because really we're bringing in so many different factors here. I mean, the movement, the food, the nutrition, the mind-body component. Fern Olivia's meditation at the beginning was fantastic. And this is all part of living well and feeling well with hypothyroidism. And so I want to thank the folks at Paloma for putting this together for patients, because this is really representative of the approach we all have to take individually to feel well and to live well. Because it's not just take a pill and you'll feel fine. It's not just take this supplement and you'll feel fine. It's do all of these things as part of an integrated approach to your overall wellness. So I guess maybe it might make sense to open up to some questions, or see if anybody has anything that they want to ask. I'm happy to, I've been throwing in some comments and things during the presentations, but I'd be happy to answer any other questions that anybody might have.
Yeah, we have some questions in the chat, Mary. I'm sure you haven't been monitoring them as you've been talking, so
yeah,
I'll throw them at you.
Right.
And thank you for mentioning about Paloma and also doctors that are treating, you know, labs, symptoms, and history, because we think it's really important that there's not just, you know, a sticker slapped on as a one size fits all.
Exactly.
So combining a couple questions, I have seen people wondering if they know it's time to switch doctors. How do they find a new doctor? Where do they go? Do you have any tips beyond trial and error?
Well, one of the things that that I would suggest, number one is, you know, double check and see if your state is one of the states where you can access a Paloma consult, because that's certainly an option for people, because here we already have doctors that are vetted. These are doctors that already know what they're doing when it comes to thyroid. And so if you are eligible in the state that you're in to be able to utilize the Paloma doctors, that's a good option. I also suggest to people oftentimes, before you commit to a new doctor, wherever you're going, is to do a quick consult with them, just to get a feel. Sometimes you can even just call the office and get an idea. I have sometimes, when I'm coaching with patients who are looking for new doctors, I'll say, call up the office and say, hey, does Dr. Smith or Dr. Jones work with natural thyroid? Does he do T3 tests? Does she check reverse T3? Is she willing to work with natural thyroid, et cetera? And you can often tell by the response of the office staff. If they say, what are you talking about? that's a good sign that you probably aren't heading in the right direction. Or if they say, oh, no, 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 we don't do natural thyroid. We don't do T3. We only work with, conventional approaches. But if you feel like you're getting some progress, sometimes you can schedule, some doctors are willing to do a free 10-minute quick call with you. In other cases, you might have to pay a small consult fee, but I think it's well worth it before you plunk down hundreds of dollars for some doctor, maybe out of network, or before you're paying for hundreds of dollars of lab work for this doctor. You want to get a feel for what this kind of approach is going to mean for you. So that's one way. Another thing is to talk with other patients and people who are doing well and feeling well. I have probably a network of about a dozen doctors in the country that I truly trust. And I send people up and down the coast. They're driving, they're calling, they're doing telemedicine. In some cases, they're driving 2-3 hours to see these doctors, but they are well worth it. And that sort of is another point that to bring up is you are not going to be able to find someone who can care for your thyroid, who is also going to be available when you have strep throat, and who can do your pap smears, and who can, see your daughter when she has a broken wrist, and et cetera. We're not looking at the doctor that's going to be the end all and be all for you on every possible level. You're really looking for someone who's going to have a niche to focus in on hormonal balance and hormonal health, and your thyroid in particular, because your family doctor, unless they have a very unusual interest, is not going to be very up to speed on this. And their tendency is going to be to go to that cookie cutter, one size fits all approach and answers. But the doctors that really make this their passion are the ones that are going to be able to give you that much more personalized care. And no, they can't see you when you have a sore throat or bronchitis or sinus infection, but that's okay. There's other doctors for that. These doctors are going to be able to give you the best possible care for your thyroid.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think that's helpful to think about calling ahead or getting a little bit of information before you, commit to someone.
Yeah.
Another question I'm seeing in here and just here often is, this seems kind of overwhelming. I need to change my lifestyle and medication and find a doctor and all of this. It's kind of overwhelming. Where do I start? I also hear people say, I just got a Hashimoto's diagnosis, or I just got a hypothyroidism diagnosis, but no information. I just got sent out of the office with that information and that's it. So I think people might be curious, like, where do they start? What's step one?
Well, I always feel like step one is to educate yourself, because again, in most cases, even the best doctors are going to be able to spend some time with you. And some cases, the not so best doctors might not spend much time with you at all, but you really are going to need to understand your condition. That's part of that idea of being the CEO of your own healthcare. You are going to need to learn what is Hashimoto's, what is hypothyroidism. You're going to need to understand what the key tests are that are going to be taken to monitor your condition and monitor your response to treatment. And so you want to at least give yourself some baseline knowledge and baseline understanding of the condition. You don't have to become an endocrinologist yourself, and you don't have to be reading, 25 medical manuals, but you do need to know the terminology, understand the tests, learn some of the lingo, so that you at least have a grounding on that. And there are so many wonderful resources out there, and there's information at the Paloma page. I know Thyroid Nation has great info. I've got information and books, and we all have social media where we're sharing this kind of information all the time about different elements of this. But get yourself up to speed so that you can have an intelligent conversation with your doctor about it. Because if you're really going to just rely on the doctor to feed you all the information, you're really going to be in a difficult situation, because you're never going to even know what questions to ask. And one other tip that I often give, especially because thyroid affects women so often, and I think we're 8 times more likely than men to get a thyroid condition, is when we're talking to doctors, we need to make a differentiation between how we talk to the doctor and the way we would talk to our girlfriends. Because unfortunately, there is a bias against women in medicine right now. When you go into the doctor, If you go in and you start saying, oh my God, doctor, I feel so fat and I'm so tired and oh, my hair is falling out and, and you go in and you complain in a way that you would complain over coffee with your girlfriend at Starbucks, the doctor's going to hear emotional symptoms. And that is often why so many thyroid patients are told, oh, well, it's stress, depression, PMS, or menopause, or, you new mother syndrome, you're tired, postpartum. I mean, all of these different kind of vague non-diagnoses get thrown at us. And we're often, again, handed a Prozac prescription and sent on our way rather than being taken seriously. So I always encourage women to quantify and sort of, that old advice we get about going into an interview, provide evidence and facts and details. So it's not, I'm so tired. It's, doc, I'm sleeping 8.5 hours a night and I am still so exhausted I need a nap every afternoon. Or, doc, I'm eating 1,300 calories a day of a low carb diet and I am gaining 2.5 pounds a week. You want to give them numbers and data because they can hang on to that and take it seriously. Whereas I'm gaining weight and I'm so tired and I'm so exhausted and I'm depressed, they're going to hear, not all of them, I mean, some of them are going to be able to translate that, but some of them are going to hear that as emotional symptoms that need a mental health solution instead of these are thyroid symptoms that need a thyroid solution.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm seeing a lot of comments in the chat about like, good point, really good point. You need to come in and be, I don't know, like you just said, provide evidence. Okay, we've got time for one last question.
Okay.
It's a little bit different. Actually, it's not really different. The question is, if my doctor tells me to count calories and I have a history of eating disorder, is that a red flag?
I would say if the doctor knows that you have an eating disorder and the doctor's telling you to then hyper-focus on calories, that's, to me, a doctor that's not being particularly sensitive to your situation. So, I mean, doctors, that's the thing with thyroid in general, is the doctors don't understand the relationship between thyroid and weight and how the thyroid is only one leg of that hormonal stool. And when the thyroid's out of balance, we often see adrenals out of balance and sex hormones. And we also see blood sugar irregularities and a higher risk of type 2 diabetes as well. So there's so many factors that go into a difficulty losing weight when you're a thyroid patient. It's not so simple as take the right medicine and the weight flies off. Sometimes we have to look at all of these hormonal factors as different players in a bigger picture. Again, that integrated approach to wellness. And there's an integrated approach to weight loss as well. And thyroid is often only one piece of the puzzle. So any doctor that really doesn't understand something about eating disorders to the extent that they would suggest doing something that's considered counterproductive for someone with an eating disorder, to me would be a red flag that the doctor's either not paying attention or not listening or not familiar enough with your history or simply not very knowledgeable.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I lied. I have one more question that I think might be really helpful to everyone. Something we hear often is that it's hard to share with loved ones about their experience. Do you have any tips for how to talk to family or friends about a thyroid condition and what that is like?
Yeah, that's, I have actually, interestingly, I've written a couple of letters, open letters that I've published over the years, an open letter to my family and friends, and another one that was an open letter to my coworkers. And it was essentially to help educate those family members and friends and coworkers about what it's like to have a thyroid condition. And it's very difficult to communicate it to people who don't, because this is one of those invisible chronic illnesses. And in many cases, people, they don't see that you're hypothyroid. I mean, very few of us are walking around with a giant goiter on our neck, which says, I have a thyroid problem. It's not that obvious. Yeah, we might be carrying 20 extra pounds. We might be puffy or tired, or we don't always want to stay up late, or we don't have the energy to do the things we'd really like to do. And people often think that that's malingering. She's lazy. She just wants to blame something for being overweight, or she just doesn't feel like going, or she doesn't want to work hard, etc. And sometimes what you really need to do is sit them down and go over the symptoms with them, explain it to them. I've often found that sometimes, you know, I talk with I do a lot of coaching with women and their husbands don't get it. And I'll say, look, could you get your husband on for just a quick 10-minute piece of our coaching session? And I'll talk with the husband and I'll say, look, here's the deal. Here's what your wife is going through. Have you ever had the flu? Yes. Do you remember the worst you felt during the flu where you barely could move your arms and get out of bed? Yeah, I remember that. Okay, that's how she feels every morning, dude. And and the guys are like, whoa, you really? And so sometimes I try to, you know, I'm not harassing them with it, but I'm trying to give them something that they can relate to understand, because people don't get it. They think, oh, and part of the problem is we have celebrities on TV. Oh, you know, I take a pill and now I'm great. And they're spokespeople for thyroid drugs and things. And they're, you know, size 2 and they feel great. And why can't you be like her? The husbands think. And, you know, there's so much mythology sold about thyroid. And unfortunately, our spouses, our partners, our friends, our coworkers are oftentimes buying into some of that. And so sometimes they need to hear it from a neutral third party, whether it's a sympathetic doctor, a friend, a coach, an expert, or an article that they read, or a section of a book, something else to give them sort of a neutral opinion about it that they might take more seriously than, oh, my wife, she's always complaining, or, oh, my sister, she's just lazy. And this way, sometimes hearing it from a third party can give it a little bit more credibility. And they think, well, okay, yeah, I guess maybe that's true if somebody else is describing it the same way that she is.
Yeah, it sounds like you said the first step for a patient is education. It sounds like it's the same for sharing with our loved ones.
Exactly. But sometimes that education has to come from somebody besides the patient, because we're often the person they're least likely to believe for whatever reason, you know, simply because of life and relationships and things. We want to make sure that we're getting that third party information in the picture too.
Awesome. Mary, thank you so much for being here with us today. This was such an honor for people to be able to ask you questions and to hear from you. We're excited.
It's been a pleasure.
As part of Team Paloma. Thank you so much and have a great rest of the day. I know you're going to stay for the last, about 15 minutes left here. Remember, I run a little bit over the hour. And we've got Taylor Morrison here now, who is the founder of Inner Workout. And she's had an interesting history. She worked for a Fortune 100 company and was then the first employee at a startup. She's a certified yoga instructor and a certified group fitness trainer. So she's got a lot of pieces that have all kind of come together to make Inner Workout. So Taylor, I'll let you tell everyone a bit more about you and a bit more about Inner Workout. And then I think you're going to lead us through a self-care practice.
Like I was just introduced, my name is Taylor Lise Morrison. I'm the founder of a company called Inner Workout. And really our goal is to make self-care sustainable and accessible for other people. I come by this work not because I'm naturally super good at self-care, but because it's something that I've needed. I've battled burnout a lot in the past, and so I've had to build a definition of self-care and self-care practices that are something that, instead of being burdensome, are something that is actually supporting me. So what I actually want to do today is just talk through some quick tips around self-care and how you can start to reframe how you're thinking about it. So if I can, let's see, I'll share my screen. Everyone can see this. So right before we went on, I just scrolled through Instagram. This is hashtag self-care, and you've got like a TikTok dance, you've got some inspirational quotes, you see somewhere, oh, where's it coming? You'll see something from Disney. You've got people smiling and looking happy, what looks like a ice cream, a makeup brush. There's a lot of things that happen when you look up self-care, and sometimes it can be confusing and a little overwhelming of like, okay, what is this thing? And if I were to sit down with you all to chat about self-care, you might say, okay, well, based on what I've heard, self-care is having a multi-step skincare routine, or it's going to therapy, or practicing yoga regularly, or because I'm doing yoga, I have to make sure that I'm doing something more high intensity. And then I should be meditating, And then now you probably can't get a manicure, but maybe you give yourself a manicure, and then, and then you think, okay, I'm at home, I need to cook more, I need to curate my space so it looks really cute. Maybe if there is a way that you can safely get outside, you feel like you need to go outside and journal and read and listen to books and listen to podcasts. And it can start to get really overwhelming if you're viewing all of these things that are good and supportive as things that you have to do all the time, especially if you're already experiencing things like fatigue, especially if you're already feeling a sense of overwhelm in other parts of your life. And I think that maybe the way that a lot of us are practicing self-care isn't really sustainable. So for me, right now I spend a lot of time talking about how self-care is more than bubble baths. It's more than doing facials, but my journey did start with a bubble bath. I was super stressed out on a Sunday night, and I was looking at my computer, trying to get work done, and I was kind of going between tabs and thinking that I was being productive, and I wasn't. My brain was just in a million places. So closed my laptop, and I decided to take a bath. And I didn't look at my phone or my laptop until the following morning, until Monday morning. And that felt so good for me to have that separation and to just say, I'm creating space in my life and space in my brain. So that was really my first self-care ritual. And as I started having this be something that I did on Sunday nights, every Sunday night, and I was like, man, why am I only now reserving this feeling for Sundays? How can I start to incorporate this sense of self-care into the rest of my life? And I started realizing other people were looking out at how to practice self-care as well. And eventually I came to this working definition for self-care, and you can take it and steal it as your own. You might say this is a good starting point and switch it up a little bit. But what I found to be really useful is to talk about self-care as this two-part process of listening within and then responding in the most loving way possible. So all those things that I listed out at the beginning, those are ways, yes, that you can practice self-care, but the process of self-care, a lifestyle that's care-filled, is about listening to yourself where you're at today in the moment and then responding with love. And I don't know about you, but especially in this current state, I could ask myself and check in and see what I need, and I could need one thing in the morning and another thing in the afternoon. So what I want to do for the next few minutes is just to talk about some new truths, some new ways that we can start to think about self-care that are less about having a to-do list, that are less about you having to have the fanciest products, and are more about what you can do when you're listening and responding with love. So the first truth about self-care is that it's multidimensional. A lot of times we can think about self-care only as the physical or only about how we're feeling, and there's actually a lot more to self-care. So at Inner Workout, everything that we do is based on the 5 dimensions of well-being. So first is physical, and not just about how you are eating healthfully or moving your body, but really this ability to tap in and start to cultivate this ability to listen to what's going on in your body, the signs, the things that it's telling you, and how you feel about your body. Then we get to energetic. A lot of that is connecting with your breath, knowing that we have different amounts of energy throughout the day, and the way that we use our energy, you know how we say you have the same 24 hours in a day as Beyonce. But Beyonce also has a whole team that's supporting her and nannies and all these other people. And so she's able to show up and use her energy in different ways throughout the day where we might have to expend it. And some days you wake up and you've got like this much energy, and some days you wake up and you have boundless energy. So knowing how to manage it. Then you look at mental and emotional. So what you're putting into your brain, how you're using it, and then the things that are coming out, those thoughts, those feelings, those emotions. Then we look at wisdom. So the ability for you to tap into your inner knowledge, to be able to trust that you're the expert on your own experience. And then finally, bliss, which is the sense of connection. When you're connected to yourself, you're connected to a community, you feel connected to something beyond you. So self-care, we are not just looking at it as only what happens to your body or only what happens to your mind, but realizing that you're this dynamic human being that has all of these different things going on inside of you. And so you want to be making sure that you're checking in with these different parts of you and you're creating practices that support you in these different parts. Next truth about self-care is that sometimes it's proactive. So sometimes you do something like I did with my bath ritual. You know that this thing makes you feel good, so you put time on your calendar to have this happen. Sometimes rituals can be a little bit restrictive and we end up beating ourselves up because we didn't wake up at 5 a.m. when we thought we would, and now we feel like a bad person and we're kicking ourselves. Rituals shouldn't be like that. If we're beating ourselves up about self-care, then it's not a good way for us to approach it. We're actually doing the opposite. So I like to think of rituals as really simply having an intention and then components that support it. So if we think about a morning ritual, one way is to say, like, I need to wake up at 5 a.m. and I need to spend 20 minutes meditating, and then I have to do an hour and a half working out, and then I have to make my fancy French press coffee in order for me to have a good day. And then if you don't wake up at 5 a.m. or you only get to work out for 20 minutes, you feel bad. So I like to think that intention and then the components that support it. So a simple intention could be, I want to set my day up for success. And I know that I feel successful in my day when I get to move my body, and when I spend some time reflecting, and when I have a beverage that feels like a little bit of a treat. And so it could look like one day you wake up early before your alarm clock, so you've got this whole time, and you get to have a really long workout. Or it could be you wake up an hour before a big meeting, and so you only have time to put on a song and kind of stretch while you listen to that song. You write out gratitudes really quick, and then you make a Keurig coffee that day. You're still supporting the same intentions, and it allows you to have a lot more grace rather than judgment when things don't go exactly as planned. Next self-care truth is that self-care can also be reactive. We can't plan for everything. So it's nice to have those rituals that are those points that we have in our days, our weeks, our months that we know are going to be supportive to us. But I don't think I'm the only one. I hope I'm not the only one who sometimes gets blindsided by what happens during a day. So it's nice to have what I call your self-care toolkit, these practices that you know can be supportive for you. So it can be something simple, like having breathing exercises that feel good. When in doubt, just being able to lengthen your exhales is a really good way to center you. It could be calling a friend, moving your body. I love to just put on a song that fits my mood and dance to it. And it's this way for me to kind of process what's going on. That doesn't have to take a lot of time. Could be journaling. Right now it's a little bit tricky, but it could be getting out in nature. Even simple things like enjoying plants that you have in your house and enjoying that greenery. Doing something creative that's creative just for you, not because you're trying to show it off on Instagram. Being grateful. One of my favorite things is just to set a timer for 1 minute and think of all the reasons that I'm grateful. And then if you have pets, just spending some time with your pets. Pets are so excited when you play with them. Yeah, I see Mary's dog right there. They're so excited when you play with them. They make you feel good. And there's something about being in the moment, hanging out with your pet, that can almost be like a meditation, a furry meditation. And then the final piece that I want to leave you with is that self-care is dynamic. So a lot of times we approach self-care as this thing that we set and forget. I've got this ritual. This is what I do for self-care. This is my self-care thing. But we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice when we approach it that way, because self-care is shifting and changing. Because we're shifting and changing. You're not the same person that you were yesterday. So I like to think of us going through life in seasons. And as you're moving throughout these seasons, you might notice that there are some shifts that you need to make in your self-care. Seasons can be the physical seasons. So when it's winter, you're probably going to have different self-care practices than the summer, depending on where you live. I live in Chicago, so it's very different what I need in winter because it's really cold here. Menstrual season. So if you're a person who has a period, you have different things happening hormonally. There are different ways that you need to support yourself. And you have to be aware of those shifts, not thinking that you need the exact same thing when you're on your period as when you're ovulating. Then there's emotional seasons that happen as we're processing current events, as we're looking back at events that happened and really starting to think through them. As you're shifting between those seasons, you might need different things. And then landmark seasons. So you get a promotion, you decide to buy a house, you decide to move across the country, you have these big milestones, and then all of a sudden you have more responsibilities at work and your self-care has to look a little bit different. Or you're taking care of a whole house instead of a tiny apartment and your self-care looks different. So as you start to progress with whatever you define as a milestone, you might have different self-care needs. So my big thing that I want to leave you with, if you remember nothing else, is to listen in, to make that time to listen within, to respond with love, and then to repeat, to know it's a process that's always happening, and just to keep checking in with yourself and know that self-care is something that is going to change. And that's not something that you need to be worried or concerned about. That's something that happens because we are always changing and evolving. So with that being said, I will open it up for questions if we have time. I don't know if we have time.
I had to take myself off mute. I don't see any questions currently, though. Everyone, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I do see a lot of things that people are saying. Thank you for redefining self-care. Love what Taylor's saying. Someone said that today's self-care was spending 3 hours learning in this presentation. So thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge. Yep, lots of thank yous. Taylor, if people want to find you elsewhere, I know you had it up there, but where can they find you online if they want to learn more about self-care and how to take care of themselves?
Yeah, you can find us at innerworkout.co, and then on Instagram at innerworkout, on Facebook at the innerworkout.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can put it.
Perfect.
Someone
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of our speakers that shared today. I think we heard some themes, and I hope everyone took away something new and something practical and tangible from today's retreat. What you guys can expect next is an email in the next couple days with our virtual goodie bag. There's a lot of good stuff in there, and there'll be a replay of this. So if you missed a little bit or just want to rewatch it or share it with someone, you'll get that. And then you can also expect that in the next week or so, we'll get you some answers to some of these questions. We're gonna save the chat and sort through the chat so that we can sort of consolidate and get you more answers. Thank you all so much for joining us today and giving yourself these 3 hours. To all you moms, I hope you have a good Mother's Day tomorrow and have a happy Women's Health Week. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon.